The governor of the state of Illinois has declared a gubernatorial disaster proclamation in response to the COVID-19 outbreak, and all of the city of Elmhurst is covered by the disaster area. In light of the ongoing COVID-19 outbreak, the mayor of the city of Elmhurst has determined that the in-person meeting for the October 4 city council meeting may not be practical or prudent in light of the disaster. All of the aldermen of the City Council participating in the October 4, 2021 City Council meeting, wherever their physical location, shall be verified and determined that they can hear one another and can hear all discussion and testimony during the meeting. With that, Tamer, call the roll, please.
Toludo. Here. Cahill. Absent. Nudera.
Here.
Park.
Here.
Conquest.
Here.
Bastido.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
Brennan.
Here.
Veremis. Absent. Deuter.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Hill.
Here.
Palumsky.
Here.
Jensen.
Here.
12 present, 2 absent.
12 present, 2 absent. We have a quorum. Are there any announcements from the dais? Alderman Mulliner.
Yeah, the American Legion is having a songwriters event. It's their second annual. It'll be on October 16th in the evening. Tickets are available at the Chamber of Commerce site.
Thank you, Alderman Mulliner. Any other announcements? All right. Next is receipt, item 4, receipt of written communications from the public. Is there any member of the public that has a written communication that they would like to deliver to the council? If so, please raise your hand. Mr. Daniel? Mr. Daniel, this is written communication.
Right, it's in front of you. I was stepping to the microphone so everyone could hear me, but I already distributed it to you and the alderman, Mayor.
All right. Very good. Thank you. Anyone else with a written communication? There being none, we'll move on to public forum. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to address the council on any matter he or she so chooses. In view of the amount of work that we have before the council tonight, and in fairness so that others may also have a chance to speak, I'm going to ask you to hold your comments to 3 minutes, and we will enforce that. Please state your name when you approach the microphone over to my right. And address is optional, but if you provide it, it helps us to get back to you. With that, Clerk Tamer, do you have persons who've signed up for public comment?
I do, Mayor. Also, there is a public comment that is posted by Michael Pusick, and also he's signed up for public comment. So I don't know if it's the same one or if he's also here to give public comment.
All right. If he's not, we'll see if he shows up or not then.
Okay.
He didn't
But
sign in.
there is one posted. There's a sign in here, but again, it could be already that it's posted.
All right. Well, let's
next
go to the
one.
first one.
Next one then is Michael Novick.
Michael Pusick is first.
Sure. Okay, Michael Pusick,
All right,
sorry.
thank you, Mr. Pusick. If you'll step up to the microphone. State your name, address is optional.
Can I take my mask off?
Yes, you may take your mask off when speaking.
I'm Michael Pusick. I'm the manager of the Wild Trace Townhomes that abut the Roberto's Marici 20P19 application site. I've read both the majority and minority committee reports concerning this application, and our 13-owner association supports the majority opinion of your development committee recommending that this application be denied. I've written a lengthy response to the 28-page minority report. The report actually reads as if it's been authored by the applicant's attorney and rehashes many of the arguments that have been presented during this long debate. My full response is submitted in online comments, and you can read it whenever you feel like it. But I did want to go through a couple of items that I think are important. First of all, Plan B that was submitted with the minority report is not the same Plan B that was presented as a condition with the Planning Commission review. There are subtle changes, but they're changes that I think are enough to warrant a reinvestigation of that plan. The back door to the restaurant has been removed. The accessible parking has been changed. There are subtle other changes. One of the cute little changes is that they've added a trash dumpster along Eggleston Avenue, which looks as if they think Eggleston Avenue is part of their personal alley or something. It just doesn't belong where they've got it listed. But all of those things were added. So I wanted that to be brought up. The minority report suggests allowing the applicant to leave the lights on later than was a condition of the review by the Planning Commission. And I think if you ask the Blairs if they want lights on in a parking lot late at night when their windows are like 5 feet off of the property line, that is going to be affected by this, and the foot candle level is going to be at about 2 foot candles right at that property line. I don't think they would agree with that stipulation. Landscaping fencing solutions that are proposed in the minority report as an appeasement to the residents ask the residents to pay to remove existing mature landscaping, then pay for new landscaping selected from an abysmal assortment of options. And this is all along fences that they don't particularly like. Once done, they can apply for reimbursement to the applicant. And truthfully, we have very little faith that the applicant would abide by these procedures that are outlined. And we have serious reservations with this suggestion. I'm going to skip forward and just sum up. We really oppose the application made by an individual business owner for his own personal use with no evidence of need, no proper impact studies, no community support, and no regard to the welfare, safety, and health, or the quality of life for the residents that will be affected. I think it's important to note that we've had hundreds of residents sign petitions. We've had over 80 residents issue opposing letters to this application, and we've had very, very minor support for this application, and most of that comes from the applicant himself and his paid minions.
Mr. Pusich, I'll have to ask you to wrap up. You're well over the 3
Okay.
minutes, please. Thank you.
We respectfully request that you deny this application.
Thank you, sir. Clerk Tamer?
Michael Novak?
Mr. Novak?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your time. I am Mike Novak. I live on South Hawthorne Avenue in the 5th Ward. My in-laws are the Dungans. They live directly adjacent to 2 of the 3 proposed lots, and this is near and dear to my heart because my 20-month-old daughter plays in their backyard next to where these cars would be parking. These are residential lots, and they're obviously not zoned for commercial use. And Roberto's and the Maricis are trying to force round pegs into square holes here. The proposal does not meet the 7 standards required for a conditional use permit. It would be detrimental to the general comfort of the neighbors. You have dozens of us here stating that fact. We're already negatively impacted by the proximity of the restaurant. To bring it closer would intensify the issue, and to state otherwise would be foolish. It would lower the property values of the homes adjacent to the parking lots, and if anybody thinks otherwise, ask yourself, would you want a parking lot next door? I'm going to assume that everybody's going to say no. That means that there's less demand for these houses. Simple economics, supply and demand. If there's less demand, the cost goes down. That hurts the value of the homes. I could go on about the standards and how this proposal does not meet them, but I would run out of time. I have one last thing to say. Alderwoman Polomsky, I read a quote of yours from the patch. This was, I believe, from the minority report. You said something that I take issue with. You said residing in this neighborhood is in part dependent upon the vibrancy of the Spring Road Business District. This is completely backwards and a gross misunderstanding of this community. The vibrancy of the Spring Road Business District is dependent on the neighbors that support it. We are not dependent on Roberto's or Doc's Victory Pub or the Spring Inn or the 7-Eleven. We are dependent on our schools and our teachers, and most importantly, our neighbors, our family, and our friends. When my wife and I bought here, we bought because of Lincoln School. We bought because of the young, active community, the proximity to York High School. We bought here because we can safely walk in the neighborhoods and enjoy the green space, and because we're down the road from a world-class hospital. We did not buy here because of any of the bars or restaurants. They are here because of us. The businesses are a part of a community, but none of the businesses on Spring Road are cornerstones of this community. We, the citizens, who are by and large against this parking lot, we are the cornerstones of this community, and we are the ones supporting the businesses. We are what makes it vibrant. It is not the other way around. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Clerk
Mark
Dan-
Daniels?
Good evening again, everybody. Mark Daniel, resident of Elmhurst for almost 20 years now, actually. 125 Harbor Terrace is where I live. My office is in Oak Brook Terrace. Well spoken. When you take a look at the regulations for this particular zoning district, indeed, it exactly echoes what you just heard about who and what is the cornerstone of the neighborhood. The business district on Spring Road is there to serve the neighborhood. It is not the other way around. You're also here as elected officials to serve the residents and do so openly, honestly, and candidly. We've been doing some back and forth, Mayor Levin, in the media. You've accused me of spreading falsehoods about you. I stand behind what I've said. This project had your support from the beginning. Mr. Day reports in an email that we obtained through FOIA that as long as they did what the neighbors demanded, this project should be a good project, and you intend to do what Alderman Levin and Alderman Park told them to do, and that was meet the neighbors' demands. Well, you know what? Property rights come into play here, and you've got that analysis backwards as well. Exhibit C is perhaps the most offensive thing I've seen in 20 years of practice. You are compelling neighbors to install a buffer on their property that is the burden of the applicant, to essentially give up 6 feet of their property, the Dungans, 200 feet, 6 feet wide. That's 1,200 square feet. Multiply that by the per square foot value of their lot, and you are already at the aggregate total of the landscape contribution Roberto's is reimbursing. You're at $381 a square foot versus the $40 to $41 a square foot that it should be. That is an absurd reversal of the property rights scenario, just looking at your own authorship of Exhibit C. Then I look at Exhibit E, and I see a plan dated the same day as the minority report. Section 2.10C of your ordinances says the minority report must address, it uses the word shall, all or part of what was before the committee. The DPZ committee didn't have Exhibit E before it. It didn't have Exhibit C before it. It didn't have Exhibit B before it. Exhibit B isn't even a faithful representation of what was before the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's a joke. You should adopt a motion to strike the minority report to save face here. I saw some of you set aside my correspondence that I delivered. Some of you in less than 2 seconds, just enough to read the letterhead. I would like you to read what we submitted.
Mr. Daniels, your 3 minutes is up. Please wrap up your
The
comments.
faith in the community and its elected officials is critical here. Please stand by your oath and vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Brian Kowiski?
My name's Brian Kowalski. I live on on Eggleston, just east of Roberto's. Moved there about a year ago. Lifelong resident of Elmhurst. Used to live up on the north side of town where we had a lot of traffic issues, lots of speeding down Walnut and Lake Street. We moved away from that area to get to central Elmhurst because we've got 3 daughters under the age of 5. We thought it'd be a much safer neighborhood in terms of traffic and ease of playing with kids in the neighborhood. We've got about 30 kids in between Argyle, Eggleston, and Prospect, all young kids that like to be outdoors and are active in the streets, sidewalks, whatnot. My biggest concern with this is the traffic. Traffic down Eggleston right now is horrendous. We were outside all day yesterday, and I had to yell at about 3 cars to slow down that were easily going 35 to 40 miles an hour down Eggleston. There's no stop sign at Prospect and Eggleston, and cars just go zipping down there. My concern for my girls' safety is paramount, and I'm also concerned for the other kids in the neighborhood. I've been told from the other people that have done much more work on this issue than me that there's never been a true traffic study in this neighborhood. It's all based on books. I don't know how that's feasibly possible to understand the traffic issue by looking at books and saying that these lots will not increase traffic in our neighborhood. Makes 0 sense to me. And I don't have the financial issues and the valuation problems that the neighbors that live right up against it do, which this is becoming to sound pretty, bad for these people that live there, because it sounds like they don't have much to go on right now. I feel really bad for them, but in terms of the traffic in our neighborhood, I think there at least needs to be a traffic study done to make a logical decision on this. And until I see that, I'm 100% going to be against this until I know that the kids in the neighborhood are going to be safe. So I wish you'd consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Clerk Tamer?
Ken Blair.
My name is Ken Blair. I live at 262 Eggleston, Unit D, which is the townhome that abuts the what's called the hump, generally. So I want to thank you, council members, for the opportunity once more to speak to you in opposition of Roberto's conditional use permit. I have some idea of the time your dedication to city service requires of you. I suspect many of you have felt much like my wife Sarah and I do. This has been a difficult process to work through and to understand. New to Elmhurst and our townhome community at Wild Meadows Trace, Sarah and I were pretty much blindsided by this proposal to essentially rezone the residential property right next to us and remove all the green space in favor of a parking lot of unproven need and over the objections of an overwhelming preponderance of our new neighbors. Like a number of you, I then knew little of the zoning rules and the process, which would consume a great deal of time and energy to navigate. I've now sent letters to the Zoning and Planning Commission, have spoken at commission meetings about the failing of this proposal to meet the required conditions for use, just as the ZPD committee majority reported. I've spoken at ZPD committee meetings and attended all meetings of these groups that I could, but the city's process was the easier piece to decipher compared to learning the backstory and recognizing the intentions of the petitioner. Back in June of 2020, the petitioners met with only a couple of my neighbors who they expected to oppose them and tried to placate them. Then, the petitioner, at our request, shoehorned in a meeting with a few more neighbors an hour before the first Zoning and Planning Commission meeting, where we were shown the slideshow that was then presented to the commission. There was never any meaningful discussion with us neighbors. I recognize that legalistic presentation was an attempt to distract from their plan's failure to fully address, let alone meet, the conditions of use. This all took us newcomers perhaps too long to fully grasp, but I expect you, our city council, understood this much sooner. We hear a lot about conspiracy theories these days. I usually get turned off by such stuff. But the petitioner has conspired to buy up residential land and then say it could only be used for parking, and casually disclose that a Plan B parking configuration would somehow necessitate building a banquet hall, renaming it a conference center. The petitioner chose a serpentine, legalistic, self-centered, and non-inclusive approach for this application.
Mr. Blair, would you try to record?
I'm
Thank you,
almost
sir.
done. The petitioner hardened opposition by not being forthcoming about plans and suggesting it was a fait accompli. You and we know that is not the case. What you value and decide matters. Please fully consider the many objections presented here and the majority report of the ZPT committee as you deliberate this matter. This is a council decision, not some foregone legal conclusion to be rubber stamped. You will own it. Our neighborhood must live with it. All Elmhurst could be impacted by the precedent set tonight. Thank you for your attention.
Mr. Blair,
John Kosich.
John Kosich. Why don't you pass on that one if we've called at the end?
Okay. Grant Dungan.
Thank you, City Council, for your time and your votes towards the majority report. I spoke with several sitting government officials, some local, some state. Multiple of them told me the minority report is insane. I couldn't believe it. I said, well, if you think that's insane, you should see the traffic report and parking report that they came up with and the soil samples that I have. We had a record-breaking testimony, I was told. 37 people spoke within the commission. We had dozens of letters. I had older people tell me that there was no testimony. I had older people tell me that we had testimony that didn't touch any of the I'm never going to get into it. I understand that maybe a couple of people might have called all the older people. Where were they in public? Where was their public comment? Our opposition has no public testimony, and they have one letter with 2 sentences. In my hands are a couple pieces of paper. One shows that the hump was purchased for $15,000. The other one shows that it was purchased for $300,000. The house. When stated in this PTAX, Illinois State Retail Transfer Declaration, it says disclose current and intended primary use of property. Current and intended are the same in both instances. Our block is not standing for any of this. In my other hand here are the papers for the lawsuit, ready to roll. We asked for simple things, like a basic traffic study, a normal one. We asked for basic things like a basic parking study. We wanted a normal alderperson, but that didn't happen either. Now, our block is also pro-development. A lot of us live in new houses. Brian Noonan, one of my neighbors who couldn't be here tonight because he's coaching hockey, when he played for the Blackhawks, when first signed up, he moved in there. He hasn't left since. He might leave now. He does not like how things are being treated. You know, I'm at my wit's end, some of the stuff that has been said to me. When they came in 2000 and put in the restaurant, we were all for it. We had a lot of bad things happen after that. We are pro-development. You are still pro-development if you vote no for this. There's good projects and bad projects. This is a bad one. Please find your moral compass and do the right thing. Thank you.
Mr. Dungan?
Molly Novak.
Hi, I'm Molly Novak. It's kind of hard to follow my brother there. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, and staff. I'm emotional tonight. I've been dealing with this for 19 years of my life. I've lived at 270 West Eggleston, and I have lived in Elmhurst for cumulatively 21 years. Don't ask my dad, because I was away at college for a long time, but I also got my master's. So I'm having a flashback. I'm in 5th grade. I'm 10 years old. I'm driving my bike up and down the road, Eggleston, Argyle, and I'm handing out flyers for the proposed parking lot. At that time in 2002, it was 1 parking lot. Now it's 2. I think, was it Mrs. Mannion came to the zoning commission and just said, for the sake of the children, and that's all she said. And that's really all I want to say tonight. But after COVID-19, I also want to say, please, if you vote yes tonight, you're making a dangerous precedent. We need more green space in our community. Elmhurst is dead trees, if I know my German, and I think I do because of my brother, but please do not vote for this application to be accepted. I think with COVID-19, we've learned a lot. I know I have personally, and as a community, I want different things for not only my parents and all the neighbors that I know that have grown up on Eggleston, Argyle, just the list, all the names, they're still around. All these kids are now my age. They're 19 years older than when this first was submitted. And, my poor neighbors, Ernie and Carol Brogmus, God rest their souls because they're dead. But this was the last thing that they wanted, and they lived next door to us. So please dig down deep into your heart, your moral compass, and please vote the way that we would like you to vote. Please vote no.
Thank you.
James Dam.
Hi, good evening. My name is James Dam. I live on 404 Argyle. Argyle is a street right next to Spring Road and just south of Eggleston, I believe. I speak on behalf of the residents of Argyle that I have personally talked to in the past 6 months. All of them, without exception, are vehemently opposed to the expansion of the Roberto's petition, the parking lots in the neighborhood, and all of them cite increased traffic, potential increased crime, those sorts of things. We live in a quiet residential area, and lately we've seen Roberto's cars zooming up and down the street at all hours of the night and day, and that's only going to get worse if this expansion is allowed. It seems to me that the Elmhurst government, the Elmhurst aldermen, should be listening to the residents of the city and acting on behalf of those folks rather than on the interests of a single business owner. Well, I understand the right for an owner to do what he would like. I think the residents' needs and the residents' desires should take precedence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dam.
Jackie Berry.
Hi, my name is Jackie Berry. I live at 346 West Eggleston, about a half a block in from Spring. I've lived in the community for over 20 years. Currently, and through the time that I've lived in the community, there has been no parking issue that I have ever seen. The only time there's a parking issue is when the York football team is playing. There are never cars on Eggleston parked. There are cars zooming up and down Eggleston pretty frequently. So there's not a need for more parking unless there's an expansion. I think it would be difficult to imagine that an expansion would not be detrimental to the neighbors, not only the folks east of Spring, but throughout the neighborhood. Traffic is an issue today. An increase in traffic, an increase in noise, an increase in bright lights at night, increase in trash, which has been, I think, well documented, has been a challenge for Roberto's to manage even at the current size. I think it'd be tough to say that that's not going to be detrimental to the neighborhood. And so, as residents of this community, council members, elected by residents of this community, I urge you, if you would not want to live next to the parking lot, next to an expanded restaurant, please deny this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Otis Dungan.
Mr. Dungan.
If you look up at 270 Eggleston in the York Township assessment, our home built in 95, 2,714 square feet, beautiful home. It's currently valued at $615. Now, should I be crying the blues about living in a $600,000 house? No. But the house next door, 10 feet away, is 138 square feet larger, and it's valued at $757. So what's the issue? I think you all know what the issue is. I'm already diminished in value. Now I'm being told, and we've gone through this for a long time, that I'm going to get parking next to and behind my home, and my home is going to go up in value? I don't think so. Raise your hand if you think everybody's involved. Please raise your hand if you think that is true. I'm going to take that as you don't think that's true. Now, the last time I was up here, there was a zoning expert that was brought in. We sat, and he talked about the first thing was predictability. He talked about exactly when you buy a home and you have a home next to you, that's what you expect for the time that you've lived there. And we've been here 26 years. We never got a notice, a knock on the door, a phone call, a postcard, a homing pigeon, nothing about the code changed. We were made aware of it when Scott Levin was an alderman and met with us. Now, if you go on board docs, you can do it right now, I guess, like you all have your computers open, you can look up various projects that are on board docs, and every single project will have posted elevations of their finished product, no matter what it is. It will have posted soil samples. Would anyone here build a structure or a home and just start throwing it up like it's a third world country? Well, the applicant has none of this on their board docs. We've asked for it. We don't get it. We talked about 276, the hump. We asked for written permission to have a gentleman test it. Never got that. It's the only thing we've asked for. That's it. There's no asbestos abatement form. Our neighbors on both sides, who all died of cancer, told us the greenhouse is buried back there. Now, the EPA comes out and says, well, it's not a problem now, but if you excavate, it's going to be a problem.
Mr. Dungan, you have about 3.5 minutes if you would wrap it up, please.
I'm all done. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Gwen Eisenmenger?
Hi, I'm Gwen Eisenmenger. I live at 271 West Eggleston. We are directly impacted by this proposal. I want to start by saying, Mayor Levin and all the aldermen and women, thank you for your time tonight. At one of the meetings regarding the potential parking lot for Roberto's, Scott Day said, living next to a parking lot is a personal decision. In fact, many of you said, you don't want to live next to a parking lot either. Instead of the homeowners and the community getting to make that personal choice, you get to make that choice for us tonight. Over the past weekend, when talking with the community at soccer games and PTA and Girl Scouts, comments would come back to me like, there's no parking issue on Spring Road. There's plenty of parking. Whenever we're up there, we never have an issue. Other comments were, that'll destroy your neighborhood, Gwen. Lastly, I was asked questions like, Why would the city vote to put parking that clearly only benefits the applicant and not the residents that live in the neighborhood next to you? This is a question I could not answer, but these are the voices of Elmhurst, the voices that have signed petitions, the voices that have spoken up at meetings, and the voices who said they don't want a parking lot. I ask that you listen to the community and vote against this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Eisenmenger.
Dave Cienko.
My name is Paul Shenko. I live in the 2nd Ward at 355 North Highview. I am against this plan. This precedent that will be set here tonight means that a business owner can purchase land next to them and do as they wish. Listening to this discussion that's been throughout I've listened to several of these things, and I've heard contradiction upon contradiction upon contradiction from the applicant. A few examples: where their entrance is, whether or not they would provide berms to these parking lots. I've heard the lawyer for the applicant offer several times landscaping, fences, and berms. Later in that same meeting, saying that berms couldn't be done. Asking for property values. 500 pages of property values were issued to the commission for them to read through. When I hear a lie or I hear a contradiction that is issued by them themselves, followed by fluff and confusion, I'm against the plan. I'm against having cars pointed towards housing where small children live and thinking that that's a safe thing for the neighborhood. I can't get my mind around how it got to this point. The seven issues, the issues for conditional plan, I'm surprised, absolutely surprised that we even passed that part. So I want you to vote for the majority and not have these parking lots go in. It amazes me to think of the gall of an applicant to tell their neighbors that they have to pay for parts of their project, and then maybe they'll get reimbursed. That's incredible. That's incredible. That's like me asking my neighbors to pay for my kitchen refurbishing. That's ridiculous. It's silly, and that we're at this point I'm surprised. I am absolutely surprised. I hope and I expect that this is voted for. This is not voted for. The majority should be voted for. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
That's all that's signed up, Mayor.
All right, we're at the end of the public forum for those who have signed in. Is there anyone in the audience who did not have an opportunity to sign in that would like to give public comment? If so, raise your hand. See Mr. Eisenmenger, one other. Let's go left to right in the blue cap, please, first.
Good evening. My name is Bob Walshcall here, and thanks for your time. I appreciate it. But I grew up at 597 Spring Road, 2 blocks south of Roberto's. Lifelong patron, huge fan. I currently live at 151 South Lawndale. First off, I'd like to first commend you all for helping to keep the businesses and restaurants and boutiques, the things that make Elmhurst unique, thriving and growing through these past 2 years. It's been It's been impressive, and I've been very happy to call myself an Elmhurst resident, as Elmhurst has been put in the news for certain topics, albeit sometimes confrontational. I've been proud to call myself, a man from Elmhurst. Anyways, moving forward with this point here. Over the last couple of years, we've understood and learned a lot about businesses and how they can continue to grow and move forward through tough times. And businesses are always going to continue to try and strive and prosper. However, if that is accomplished via the detriment of the community, I think that progress is not met. So henceforth, I hope that you could vote no to put up another parking lot in Elmhurst. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Eisenmenger, you'd be next.
Thank you. My name is Rob Eisenmenger. I live at 271. My wife's talk tonight is going to be much better than mine. There's been so many things, and I thank you all for your support. I thank you, each one of you that I've gotten to meet in person, that have visited my lot or had the opportunity to have a conversation with over the phone. The people that I haven't, we have a very important decision that means a lot to my wife and I, and my 2 girls, and the rest of my neighbors here. We talked about values, so we don't need to go into that anymore. But we can take a look at how close the assessed value as you get away from something like a parking lot. If you move that parking lot closer to me, well, that kills one spot in between me and that parking lot. So what does that do to my assessed value? That's not a good thing, right? That does not meet the standards. We talked about the comprehensive plan. That was such a big focus. There was only one point where that was actually talked about, and that comprehensive plan was done in 2009. We haven't done anything since then. My house has actually sold twice since then. The house next to me sold 3 times. No one made a move on that. So why was it not important then, right? Scott, Mr. Levin, you, Mayor, you have been to my house so many times. It took me over 6 years to get a code violation rectified. Tina, you've been to my house. You've actually brought out engineers. We have sat there and had conversations about how do we get rid of this water. The worst thing that happens to me is in the spring, right? The ground's nice and hard. We've got this massive pile of snow that's being shoveled in off of the parking lots that are a lot away from me. That gives us heart palpitations. We don't go on vacation in the spring. We don't have that opportunity. I've had to buy pumps. I've had to buy all of this stuff. We've put money into our French drain to try and mitigate as much as we possibly can. We've done the best that we possibly can with that. Lastly, the majority and the minority report. After having a conversation about what was potentially going to be on that, I was blown away when I was the person that was going to have to foot the bill for probably not even enough to cover the foliage that would protect me from that parking lot. That's insane. I don't understand how that would even be possible. And last point, sorry for being all over the place, but I don't want to step over anybody else's. The comprehensive plan, 2009, we talked about parking. 3 different comprehensive plans were sent. It was a big think tank, right? In 3 of those, we talked about bike lanes on Spring Road. Those got killed almost 2 years ago now because they thought it was a bad idea, right? That was mentioned in 3. Why are we holding 1 hidden in this little part of it as gold? Thank you all for your consideration. I ask that you vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eisenmenger. I think we had one more, the woman in the pink and blue.
Hello. I'd also like to thank you all for your time. I'm sure that you're not sitting in an easy seat here tonight.
Excuse me, could you state your name just?
Rita Lindstrom, and you have been to my house many a times with my yard flooding, and that's what I wanted to reiterate tonight. Rob just mentioned it, but I felt like it was left out of a lot of the discussion tonight. I get 4 feet of water in my yard right now. Any more water would be just flowing out to the front street. I mean, you have got to stop and think and say, do I need to, add more to the table, the water table in that area without fixing the problem? Would you do that in your basement if you had a flooding issue? Would you redo your basement and then say, oh, I'll worry about the water later? No, we've got a water problem. Nothing should be done in that area right now until you solve that. Thank you. I would hope that you would vote no.
Thank you, Ms. Lindstrom. We have one more, please.
Good evening. I realize my name is Vivian Hahn. I live at 326 Eggleston. That's west of Spring. My backyard does back up to a parking lot. I have had major flooding. Scott, you've been to my home twice. It has been a proverbial lake. I have had my property reduced because it's unsellable, because it floods the same as Rita's and the others. But there's a couple things going on here that just in listening to everybody, I'm compelled to mention. And number one is precedence. You have these people who are now going to have a parking lot next to their home. I have the parking lot behind mine. I get the trash thrown over the fence, which I have to pick up all the time. Beer bottles, liquor bottles, masks. Happens frequently. That's another thing they're going to have to contend with. Precedence being, if it can be done on East Eggleston, what's to say it's now not going to be done on West? The Lindstroms, I forget the other, pardon? Boland. The Boland, their house right on the corner of the alley. What's to say that it's not going to start happening there? Because you said, oh, well, it was done on one side, why can't we do it on the other? When does it stop? Right on Spring Road, which I will call the old York State Bank. Big parking lot, right? Empty business. Who owns that? Why can't that be turned into the parking lot? Right on Spring Road, direct access to it, not having to go through any residential areas. Why has that been addressed at all? It's sitting there empty, being used as a parking lot. Who owns that land? Does anybody know? Who owns it? I don't know. Please speak up.
The applicant.
Why isn't the applicant then using that? As opposed to buying a residential home, which from what I heard said it was going to be conditional use, same use it a house, bolt a house down, and then want to go in and put in a parking lot. This does not make sense. I have lived there, my family has been there 57 years. I didn't just move in. This should be voted no. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, last call. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council? Seeing none, I'm going to close public forum. Thank you all for your comments. Now we're going to go to item 6, the consent agenda. Clerk Tamer, would you read the consent agenda?
Sure. Minutes of the executive session of the Elmhurst City Council on September 7th, 2021. 6.2, minutes of the regular meeting of the Elmhurst City Council on September 20th, 2021. 6.3, accounts payable, September 30th, 2021. Total $1,328,086.74. 6.4, referral, apartment, multifamily buildings, parking requirements, 7th Ward, Alderman Mulliner and Brennan. 6.5, referral vehicle sticker fees, 7th Ward Alderman Mulliner and Brennan. 6.6, referral cameras on and in city-owned buildings inland, 7th Ward Alderman Mulliner and Brennan. 6.7, report case 20 P18, City View Church conditional use permit for final PUD 343 South York Street. 6.8, report case 21 ZBA 07 Kosich lot coverage and setback variations at 130 West Church. 6.9, Metropolitan Family Services Agreement. 6.10, report Elmhurst Park District Fall Fest. See item in 9.1. 6.11, report 2022 Water Main Improvements Project, Professional Engineering Services. 6.12, report Water Reservoir Pump Repairs. 6.13, report Custodial Maintenance of Parking Decks and Pedestrian Tunnels. 6.14, report Equipment Maintenance Garage Lift Replacement. See items 9.3 and 10.2. 6.15, an ordinance extending temporary executive powers pursuant to Section 3.16 of Elmhurst Municipal Code and pursuant to 65 ILCS 5/11-1-6. 6.6, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of 8 Lazy Boy recliners and authorizing the disposal of 10 recliners for the City of Elmhurst Fire Department Station 1 and Fire Station 2. 6.17, a resolution amending the City of Elmhurst Employee Handbook. 6.18, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a settlement agreement and release by and between the City of Elmhurst, Illinois, and Timothy Place, NFP, DBA Park Place of Elmhurst for the payment of water charges. And 6.19, resolution to correct a scrivener's error in resolution number R96, 2021, entitled "A Resolution Authorizing the Execution of a Recapture Agreement by and between Matoja Nikola Trevesky and Visilka Trevesky and the City of Elmhurst, Illinois."
Thank you, Clerk. Is there any item on the consent agenda that any alderman would like to remove, either for further discussion or to vote against? Alderman Nudera.
6.5, referral on vehicle stickers.
6.5. Any others? All right, may I have a motion to approve the consent, let me ask.
Thanks, Mayor.
Alderman, you're not an alderman either. City Attorney.
Item 6.18 on your agenda is a resolution to approve a settlement agreement between the city and Park Place. And this settlement represents a dispute that was ongoing between Park Place and the city with respect to water usage. Been fortunate enough to settle that matter. The city will be receiving $179,277.89 in full settlement of that dispute between the city and Park Place.
Thank you, City Attorney. May I have a motion then to approve the consent agenda minus item 6.5? Alderman Brennan, second Alderman Deuter. Clerk Tamer.
Toledo. Aye. Cahill, absent. Nudera.
Aye.
Park. Aye. Conquest.
Aye.
Bastido. Aye. Mulliner.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
Verimus, absent. Deuter. Aye. Dunn.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Palumski. Aye. Jensen.
Aye.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent. The consent agenda passes. Item 6.5. Tama, would you read the title?
Referral, vehicle sticker fees, 7th Ward, Alderman Mulliner and Brennan.
Alderman Mulliner?
I move to move it forward.
Yes. Second? Alderman Brennan. All right, did you want to?
There's not a whole lot to make a comment about. It's a referral to go to a committee, so usually we just move those forward to the committees, so.
Alderman Dudera?
Well, the only reason I'm bringing this up is SUVs are passenger vehicles, and trucks can carry loads.
It's true.
So I think there's some discrepancy, at least in my behalf.
Okay, so just so we're clear for what we're doing, the procedure is that we're not going to debate it tonight. What the idea is to send it to the committee, and I will guess it's going to go to Finance and Council Affairs, and they will then have the discussion, and we will then flesh out any of those concerns that you may have. Thank you. Any other questions on that one? Alderman Toledo.
I'll just make the comment that as a member of the Finance Committee, you're welcome to share your thoughts or concerns with us, and we'll make sure to, discuss them at the committee before we issue a report. Thank you.
Very good. All right, Clerk Tamer, would you call the roll on item 6.5?
Yes. Toledo?
Aye.
Cahill, absent. Nudera?
Aye.
Park?
Aye.
Conquest?
Aye.
Bastido?
Aye.
Mulliner?
Aye.
Brennan?
Aye.
Remus, absent. Deuter?
Aye.
Dunn?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Halumsky?
Aye.
Jensen? 12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent. Item 6.5 passes. Moving on to committee reports, I'm going to start with item 7.1, and I'll have some procedural comments as we move forward from there. Clerk Tamer, would you read item 7.1?
Therefore, the Development, Planning, and Zoning Committee recommends that the City Council deny the request for conditional use permits for parking lots. The city attorney is hereby directed to prepare the necessary documents for City Council approval. Signed, Mark A. Mulliner, Vice Chair, and Emily Bastido, Ward 6 Alderman.
Right, a motion to put it before the council, Alderman Mulliner, with a second by Alderman Bastido. Alderman Mulliner?
You want to make your procedural comments first?
Well, I can do it now. What we're going to do is, it won't be a surprise that there's going to be a motion for the minority report that has been put on the agenda to substitute for the majority report. This is one of those situations where it's kind of black and white. You're going to probably vote one way or the other. So instead of repeating the debate on both of them, I'm going to have Alderman Mulliner present the majority report. I'm assuming Alderman Palumsky will have a motion to substitute the minority report, and I will let her present the minority report. After that time, I will take discussion on either report because I think it'll be more efficient that way. I will also suggest that if there are proposed amendments to the minority report, that we not take them until we see if it passes. If the minority report passes, it will be substituted for the majority report, and then amendments would be appropriate at that time. I will also say, I know that all of the aldermen have put a lot of time and effort into this particular item, which is appreciated. So let's get on with the discussion. I'll turn the floor over to you, Mr. Alderman Mulliner. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been a very difficult case that's been in front of us as it relates to balancing economic development versus the community and the residential properties. This is something where both are very beneficial to the city of Elmhurst, but I will say that in this particular case, I don't believe and cannot justify a parking lot going into an existing residential area. I understand that we do have the conditional use ability to do these type of things, but let me explain some of my concerns. My first concern is the fact that this is one of the very few, if not only the only, that I've been able to truly identify parking lot that has a liquor establishment that's being proposed that's pointed directly at a home 10 feet away from it. That concerns me greatly. We've looked at a number of different locations throughout the city of Elmhurst where there are parking lots that are adjacent to residential properties. Fully understand that. Most cases, there's either an alleyway in the way or there's parking that's not directly pointed at the homes, or if there is, it's not a liquor establishment. We've gone through that exercise a number of times, and I'm sure if we want to, we could probably find one or two someplace, but in most cases, those were existing before the person purchased the home that was next to the parking lot. This is the first time that we're moving forward with a concept or thinking about moving forward with the concept of putting a parking lot next to it. A couple of concerns that I have with this is, and I'm just going to use a couple of examples. We have a number of different businesses where we actually have the parking lots that point toward the businesses, and in those particular businesses, we've actually had to put barriers up to prevent cars from driving into the businesses because the person put the car into drive rather than reverse and drove right straight into the car. It's happened multiple times. That would be a little bit difficult if you're running into a house, especially with a gas meter sitting right next to it. I understand that the proposal says that they're going to put in a barrier that will prevent that from happening. That concerns me because this other location has had barriers where supposedly it was supposed to prevent it, and the cars have gone right between the barriers. The other part of this that concerns me is that the landscaping. I understand that the proposal was to put in landscaping on the property owners, not the person who has the property that's building the parking lot, but on the adjacent property. I've been sitting on this council for 22 years. I cannot come back in my own mind and find a zoning case that I can come up with that where we have requested the people who live next door to make an adoption so that they could actually have something changed next to their house. Every case that we've had has had a situation where if we wanted buffering put in or we wanted landscaping put in, it was put on the applicant's property. Traffic concerns. I know we've got a number of traffic reports that are out there. I'm just going to tell you that I'm a realist. I look at where this particular parking lot is and I say to myself, if I lived to the east of Roberto's and I was going there for dinner and I was going to pull in, I'm going to drive down the back streets. I'm not going to go out on the Spring Road. It's too difficult to make that left turn. It's a very difficult left turn. So I believe that there's going to be an increase in parking and traffic on Eggleston and all of that area to the east of where the parking lots would be placed. I think that's going to be problematic for the neighbors. It's going to be problematic for the kids who live in that particular area. Another thing that I'll say is that we had another case that was similar to this back early in the early days when I was first on the council, and it wasn't even a situation where the parking lot was pointed directly at a house, the side of the house. It was actually at the back of it. And my big contention was that we needed to have as much buffering as we could between residential and commercial. And I made the motion and pushed forward that we did not put that particular project forward. Eventually, I went to court, and courts always do different things. But ultimately, we did get it so that it was just a parking lot, and it didn't end up being an area where it was an industrial area. But I will tell you that the idea of putting a parking lot next to somebody's home concerns me greatly, especially when there was a home sitting there prior to the actual plan to put this parking lot in. I make a couple of comments that maybe it seem a little different, but as I'm sitting here and as I go out, and I know a lot of people who have bought homes in Elmhurst, I know a lot of people who have bought homes all over. When I go out to buy a home, I'm looking for a home, and I look around in the neighborhood, and I'm going to look at a couple of things. What are my schools like? What's the street like? What's my neighborhood like? And as I look at that, I'm also maybe going to look at flooding. The last thing I'm going to do is go over to the city of Elmhurst or any other city and say, hey, by the way, what's your comprehensive plan call for? Does it say that it's going to tear down the house that's next to me so I can put in a parking lot? I'm not going to do that. We have to be realistic in what people are expecting. And when you have a neighbor there, they're anticipating that that house is going to be there. They bought in a residential neighborhood. I wholeheartedly support Roberto's. Best pizza in town. I mean, there's absolutely no question in my mind. But at the same time, this project just does not make sense. Last thing that I'll say about this is that I also believe that the other thing is that if you look back at our plans, the city does have a responsibility to provide parking. So if there is an issue on Spring Road that relates to parking, we have a responsibility to identify how and where we could put that parking in so that it accommodates all of Spring Road. Spring Road is the best kept secret in the city of Elmhurst as it relates to a small business area. It's a great area. I want to see it continue to thrive, but putting in a parking lot next to two homes is not a way to help it to thrive.
Thank you, Alderman Mulliner. Is there a motion? Alderman Polumsky.
I'd like to make a motion to substitute the minority report for the majority.
All right.
You need to read it. Need a second.
Yeah, but
You have a second?
We need to read it after a second.
After a second.
All right, we have a second. Alderman Honquist. I'm going to ask Clerk Tamer to read the resolution on the minority report before the motion.
Therefore, the minority of the Development, Planning, and Zoning Committee recommends that the City Council approve requests for conditional use permits for parking lots at 283 West Eggleston and 272-276 West Eggleston with the conditions listed.
All right, so Alderman Molnar, Alderman Palumski, your motion is to substitute the minority report for the majority report.
Yes.
All right, you may be heard.
Thank you. All right, we've been talking about this for quite some time. I want to thank staff. I'm saying this first because in discussing the minority report, my intent was to achieve this in a way that would have, I'm assuming when this is over, everything's going to be FOIA'd. I wanted to show I was as deliberate and careful as possible, so I did not directly engage with the applicant's attorney in changing anything. I engaged through our staff. So I would contact staff, we talk about something, I'd say, oh, what about this option or this option? And then staff would relay that to the applicant, we'd come back. So I really want to thank staff for all the time and the options that we have discussed. I want to thank my fellow aldermen and including committee members. We've all spent so much time on this project. I want to thank the neighbors. I know the sentiment is not suggesting this is something clearly you want. It's taken up a lot of your time. I appreciate the ongoing efforts and the respectful discussion. So I want to thank everybody involved. So tonight we have this conditional use application. It's to permit the identified lots to be used as parking lots. This is fundamentally a property rights issue. The Marisi family owns the subject parcels. The Zoning Planning Commission, a non-political body, meaning they're not elected, vetted this agenda item and recommended a conditional use permit. The question I pose tonight, taking a little bit flip the coin for my report, is on what grounds can the council reject the Zoning and Planning Commission recommendation for a permit in a way that does not appear arbitrary? So in many instances, we rely on our opinions for when we're making decisions on, let's say, a new building or making a change in a plan where we weigh heavily on what we like and what we don't like. But this is a different instance. We're working within the boundaries of our zoning code. So this is not a map amendment. So this means the applicant is not seeking to change the zoning of these parcels to be commercial. This is not a text amendment. The applicant is not seeking to add the use of parking as an outright permitted use in R1 or R2 in our residential zones. And also, when people make the comparison, the council, how we voted on other topics that have been contentious, some of those topics recently have been text amendments. This is not a variation. So variation has different standards, and I would argue it's a higher hurdle to clear. There is an example when we were discussing this in committee where we took a look at a parcel that borders on North Avenue. It is a commercial building with parking, and the variation piece did not pass. It was a high hurdle to clear. But at some point, those residential lots were approved in some way to be used for parking, and they are, with the same footprint as all the other residential zones. So conditional use is a different animal than a text amendment, a map amendment, or a variation. And we're also working within the fact that parking lots are indeed a conditional use in a residential zone, and we see them in many places throughout residential areas. I recognize, I think from a practical standpoint, It is very different to take a look at a parking lot and say, well, wait a minute, if this parking lot is serving a different type of use, isn't it different? Well, I would say, from a practical sense, it seems that way. But our code addresses a parking lot to be serving a place to leave your cars, and it doesn't govern the activities of the drivers of those cars. We are not questioning the use of vehicle owners. We are questioning the use of a parking lot. To reject this on the basis of stormwater issues, I don't believe is a viable reason. I do want to say, yes, there is a significant stormwater issue. We are aware of that from the Christopher Burke report. I know there's been a lot of work that has been done throughout town. I do realize our I&I had been addressed with some of the liner projects in this area that has shifted how water flows. But this area is an area of an inundation, but first of all, the applicant is going to meet our code, which we added since the Christopher Burke report, where we impose a requirement for any new net impervious surface to be accounted for. So that will be achieved if this is approved in the permitting process. So that can be achieved a number of ways: underground detention, impervious surface, permeable pavers. And in addition to that, that's a standard that we have taken on as a city. But in addition to that, for the north lot, where there's the most concern for flooding, one of the conditions imposed is to connect an inlet, or to arrange for an inlet so the water can travel from east to west from the neighboring property. So it will not be impeded by this project. But most importantly, we allow permits to proceed on parcels that fall within areas of inundation. For us to say we're going to halt this development, or we don't have a moratorium on our development because it might fall within an area of inundation. For us to choose this to say it cannot proceed because of stormwater would be singling this one out, and we don't treat our other projects, other parcels, other improvements like that throughout the city. So to reject this based on potential harm to home value, I think is particularly difficult. First, evidence accepted as part of the record does not suggest that this will be the case. And again, for us to be citing evidence, we can cite evidence that was accepted as part of the official record for the Zoning Planning Commission in our testimony, what has been adopted as part of that process. We have parking lots in residential zones abutting single-family homes throughout town. The residential parcels in question have a unique landscape as it is. So this area touches a significant variety of uses. So to the west, we have commercial. To the north is the rail line. To the east, and then depending on where you are situated in this application, and to the southeast is R4 or multifamily. And then to the south is the CR district, or the conservation recreation, and there's recreational use. So to say that this would interrupt a zone or a setting, this already has multiple factors, multiple uses, multiple zones surrounding it. And what also affects this, another reason to say that makes it difficult to say a parking lot doesn't belong, is that our comprehensive plan does contemplate this. We have updated the comprehensive plan since 2009. When we do that though, we don't amend one entire document, we adopt parts of it. So, our amendments to downtown plan or other sub-area plans, our bike plan is part of that. We add those on. It's not that it is like edited out in our actual comprehensive plan, but I do want to read this because Typically, yes, our comprehensive plan is a planning document. It is designed to guide policy, but in this particular case, there is a lot of targeted consideration. So specifically on page 8 of the appendix, the comprehensive plan states, the vacant parcel behind Roberto's restaurant should be developed as a commercial use associated with the restaurant. And then the next bullet point says, additional parking could be provided by acquiring single-family homes on Eggleston behind the commercial parcels east of Spring Road. Now, I recognize this is contemplated, this is not adopted, but our comprehensive plan doesn't take the position of very targeted suggestions in many places in it. So that is a bit unique to this. But also how on the west side of the street, there is a commercial parking lot, as we've heard, that does serve cars of, again, we don't govern this. We're not tracking where people go. Our code doesn't say a parking lot for one use has a different standard than a parking lot for another. But there are patrons who go to bars and restaurants that park there until 2 a.m. So on the opposite end of that street, on the west side, you already have that use. For us to say we can't allow that and for it to not seem arbitrary is very difficult when it is in the same district and it is still touching residential. To deny it based on traffic and safety, there is a traffic report. Of course, they're more predictive. We can't do a full traffic study of a use until after it's done, but we do have the benefit of our own staff reviewing that traffic report and concurring with it. So we have, 2 engineers to say that this will not decrease the level of service in this area. And I live in the area that had a hospital. So there are areas that have in residential a lot of cars. This is a minimal change. It is a change, but we would anticipate it to be approximately a couple of cars an hour. Additionally, it may.
You all had the courtesy of the council's full attention, and I'd ask that you give the same courtesy back to the council. Continue.
And throughout the record, and in the traffic studies themselves, it was noted that by allowing traffic, it would be expected to reduce the number of trips taken around the block for people who are seeking to park on the street. So that is a possibility to contemplate. My point is, it is difficult to say we're rejecting this based on traffic because we have evidence on the record, which is the only evidence we are to accept, that says it is not a problem. About safety, we do have parking lots, in residential areas. The conditions speak to this and do have bollards, so a bollard and a fence, and should the residents choose additional landscaping. It is difficult to say that we reject this based on safety when we have no evidence that this is a safety issue. Our recent training, I think, was a timely reminder of a few things, though we didn't speak to this case. We spoke to zoning decisions in general. And one of the things that has stuck out to me is that in that training, under taking testimony, it says, the number of people for or against the application is not criteria for decision. So that said, that's one reason why zoning decisions are different from some of our other policy decisions. We might want to make a change to how we make a plan or a design of a city-owned parcel or something that belongs to the city based on the majority of the public or the sentiment of what we're hearing. But this is something where the number of people for or against it is not a factor. That said, though, the interest of the neighbors was a factor in modifying the conditions imposed. As noted, in response to a neighbor's concern about flooding, that's the northernmost parcel, in addition to meeting the stormwater requirements, this will have the added inlet. Additionally, conditions have to be enforceable. So we understand it has not been a fabulous relationship between the neighbors and the representatives from the restaurant. We understand that, and I will note that in the Zoning Planning Commission report, in the findings, it says, the relationship of the applicant and the neighbors was also discussed in relation to the future operation of the parking lots if approved. So the changes that are in this minority report do reflect a way to hopefully end the, ongoing discussions between neighbors and the applicant. You know, some of these changes will reflect that. I do want to, I guess before I'm done here, I want to make sure that I can verify before we continue the discussion that I get some, I just want to touch on some of the concerns raised. I would like to ask that our legal counsel do verify that this is indeed the case for a couple of things. Actually, before I go into the conditions, can I please ask that we have verification that what's been called Plan B or alterations to the original submittal are indeed appropriate, that the Zoning Planning Commission has the leeway to make those modifications, and also can we have verification that not only would the Zoning Planning Committee have the ability to make additional changes, but that because there was not the interest, or because the majority of the committee did not elect to continue the discussion about potential changes, it was then by default the role of the minority to pursue that with staff, and that is appropriate. I just want to confirm that with our legal counsel that these concerns have been raised, so concerns that we can alter the conditions that would look different than what was submitted as an application, and two, that the minority continued working with staff to come up with conditions and recommendations.
With respect to the first question, I think we've already opined that those that those items could be added, and I think it was even asked at the Plan Commission level, and we opined that it was appropriate. With respect to the second question, I'm not quite sure if I completely understood the opinion, but I think you're saying.
The question is, can the minority report author impose additional or different conditions in issuing the minority report?
Beyond what was discussed in committee. So I'd been talking with your colleague.
Yes.
Yes. So because the majority of the committee did not want to discuss potential options or entertain the possibility of approval with different or with changes, it was then appropriate for the minority, which is me, to pursue this with staff and to come up with this report.
I'm not going to, render an opinion about whether the majority engaged or not engaged, but it is appropriate. The answer to your question is yes.
Yes.
It
Okay.
is
I
appropriate
think most
to add.
generally, he's saying that the minority author can engage and talk with city council members and formulate a report of his or her own.
Yes.
All right.
But it's not because the majority refused to discuss it. It's
Whatever
because she
reasoning the author would like to attach to it.
Yeah. I don't.
Except that might be your reasoning, but whatever your reasoning is, you're certainly entitled to author your own report.
Correct. So thank you. I mean, the minority, this wasn't discussed in committee because the majority didn't seek to discuss the options in committee. We had the option to consider possibility. We had Attorney Acker present to see if we could consider options, and it was recommended that we do not pursue if the majority of the committee would like to move to deny the application. So that is why we ended the discussion on some of these extra pieces.
Well, I think probably best is just to go on with
Yep.
your
Okay. So
presentation. Yeah.
I just want to explain where this was coming from. So The commission imposed some conditions. One of them is a fence that is solid up to 8 feet. That remains. And there was an added bullet that said landscaping on the neighbor's side. There was no specificity there. I worked with staff to try to see how far back we could get the parking spaces to begin. So could it be 5 feet back? Could it be 15? Could we be, this one, staff put that together, it has like, 1.18 feet back. So my thought was, maybe there's a way to come up with something that gives a lot more room to the neighbors. And Roberto's, it's my understanding, the applicant was willing to engage to a point. However, with a fence on, with the fence, it may start to fall into the area that it wouldn't have a fence. And here is why, because they wanted to be able to access the landscaping so they could maintain it. And so to access the landscaping, they would have to, if there is a fence, go around and go by the neighbors. And let's say, for instance, a neighbor thinks that tree is dead, I want you to replace it, but Roberto's maybe disagrees. Or maybe Roberto's has a different idea of what the landscaping should be or how often it should be maintained. Or perhaps a representative who's handling the landscaping would not wander or step on or have equipment touch neighbor's property. We would be in a position of policing and having ongoing discussions about Roberto's maintenance of landscaping facing the property. I did send an email to the neighbors because I was hoping to find out from them, if given a choice, if this does proceed, would it be beneficial to, if they were given a choice, a fence, a solid fence, or landscaping? Of course, both would be probably better, but I respect that they declined to do this. I understand the position that they don't want any parking lot. But the fence and the landscaping, the way it is written now, allows for a solid fence, allows for enough room for bollards at the parking space to stop them from accelerating past a parking space through a fence. And then it's a reimbursement for landscaping. And I would agree with what was said. This is, I asked staff, from what I understand, this has not been done. But I see it as this is the opportunity to apply for and have landscaping reimbursed on your own property if you want to cover up the look of a fence. There's no need to tear up one's own landscaping. There's no need to do anything. But if the neighbors would like to have additional landscaping to block a fence, it can be reimbursed up to $121 per square feet or linear foot. Additionally, there is some language about dumpsters. While yes, that is in our code, this is a little bit more ironclad now that it is as a condition. So dumpsters will be up against, bordered on all sides by a building or a solid barrier fence. Let's see additionally. Okay. Boundaries, bollards, setbacks are those that are depicted in Exhibit B. There's a lot here. So the report reads as a recommendation, as a minority report does. I'm just presenting it tonight as I find it to be a difficult task to deny this conditional use that was recommended by the commission for the reasons that I stated. I do believe that these conditions will, if this is adopted, this is they allow for the least amount of maintenance. So if there was a condition to close the parking lot at 11 o'clock, yet the restaurant operates until midnight, we run into the issue of, well, isn't even midnight arbitrary when on the other side of the street there's a parking lot that operates until 2 a.m.? So 11 o'clock would be better, yes, but I don't know how that could be enforced. So let's say we say 11 o'clock, but the restaurant's open till midnight. If a car's parked there, do we enforce that by, would a police officer go onto private property and say, oh, if you put your key in your ignition, now you're idling, you're not parked? Or how often would this be managed? It would be very difficult. It would probably rely on neighbors having to call and report. I think it would be the easiest to maintain if this is something that doesn't require any additional oversight, and especially knowing that there's probably a case to be made that this could be pushed till 2 a.m. That's not what the applicant is requesting, because we allow that right across the street. And so I guess I just want to speak one more piece about that lighting. I understand there are concerns about having lights on that late. So our code speaks to some requirements about parking lot lighting. It's not as clear when we talk about stadium lights. We have different requirements for residential use, like on a residential parcel. So the way this is imposed here as a condition, which is, part of our code where we do contain the light that's on a parking lot, we have a lighting plan that will keep it as directed, as shown on that plot. But in theory, we could have a next door neighbor have a basketball hoop with multiple light bulbs of 120 watts shining on the neighbor's house. So this is directed onto the parking lot. Again, this is different than if we're citing lighting in other locations. If it is stadium related, it is not as clear as our code is right here with parking lot lights. So that said, I understand the neighbors are not pleased. I'm trying to approach this from a way of taking a look at our code, taking a look at under what conditions we could deny it, and I do not see justification for that. And I ask for the support of the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Polumsky. Let's move on to other discussion. None? Oh. Alderman Brennan.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm in support of the majority report. I have to admit, over the past several weeks, I've flip-flopped on the topic as I read the reports and did my own due diligence. I'm going to repeat some things here just so the record has my logic. It wasn't until I went on site to see what the parking lot would look like. And so when I did that, it was very shocking how tight this parcel actually is. But before doing that, I wanted to have something to refer to. So a number of properties have been referenced, is similar in nature to this proposed project. I think is about 27 or 28 in total. I looked at all those properties via Google Earth just to see similarities and see where they were, et cetera. And, really narrowed my list down to 7 properties. I then drove to all 7 properties to see them in person. In my opinion, none of the referenced properties were similar in nature for the following reasons. Some of the reference properties that I did go visit were clearly built, next to a parking lot. The house was clearly built. The parking lot was already there. So this was homeowner choice. The residents on Eggleston don't have that choice. Some of the reference properties had an alley buffering them from the parking lot, so there was distance there. And then some of the reference properties bordered parking lots. However, the parking lot was much larger in nature, which provided safe maneuverability and a vertical and horizontal space. That it was very obvious that it was open. It didn't feel like it was right on top of the property. So as I went on site to all three properties, the townhomes and the two bordering lots, you know, it was looking at the plans, it's my belief that the values, you know, for those who border the lot will be negatively impacted. When they bought their homes, there wasn't a parking lot. If this project moves forward, there will be a parking lot. I don't see how any way that can't negatively impact the property. The way the parking lot as designed is today, it's jammed in behind Meta Motors on the north side, and that parking lot will run the full length of the bordering home on the north of Eggleston. It also runs actually on the south side of the house, so it also runs the full length of that property. And then going east, it's jammed between the back of the properties there, the condos, and the prairie path. One other single family home and one townhome will be negatively impacted. It's just not the two houses that will be you know, east of the main parking lot. I believe this project's way too big for the limited space. As I went back and looked from the homeowner's point of view, this parking lot's right on top of them. Almost claustrophobic-like, especially the portion that's back behind Meta. You have Meta, a parking lot, and then their house. There is just no room to breathe or to enjoy their property. And going back, there's just no way that property would not be negatively impacted by this project. Maneuverability is a concern. There's parking, you know, light poles in the lot. They're very narrow, in my opinion. Lots to begin with, they're maximized. That's not the main reason for my argument. Safety is a concern, that's not the main reason. Stormwater is a concern, that's not the main reason. It really comes down to, in my opinion, these homeowners are negatively impacted by this project. The project's way too big. This parcel is not big enough to do what is wanted to be done here. And for those reasons, I'm in support of the majority report. And I ask the other council men and women to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Brennan. Additional discussion, please. Alderman Hill.
I'm in support of the majority report. Currently, as proposed in the minority report, the lights in the parking lots will be on until midnight. And commercial parking lot light time periods are not regulated in municipal code as to hours. It does say in no case shall lighting exceed 0.2 foot candles measured at the lot line. But my concern is not with lighting intensity. My issue is the time period the lot will be lit, the accompanying noise, and the proximity of the lot to the residences. Noise absolutely diminishes enjoyment, for example, sleep, of residential property, and would certainly be the consideration of potential buyers that might seek to acquire adjacent residential properties in the future. As an example, we can revisit the 2009-2010 York Stadium lighting issue, which is somewhat similar. Homes in the area adjacent to the stadium preceded lighting on the field, which was not added till 1985. And usage intensity on the field changed in 2009 with the addition of a turfed field. The neighborhood did not change, but use of the stadium did. In public discussions, the neighborhood pointed to noise issues with increased use of lighting on the field. This included vehicles, starting, idling, revving, doors, alarms and radio, loud group discussion, yelling, and other sources of noise that come with a lighted field. As an outcome of that long process, a productive dialogue formed between the neighborhood and York. Lights at the stadium, which is of course just down the street, are generally off at 9 p.m. or earlier, and in specific instances may stay on, but rarely later than 10 p.m. This was an optimal solution for residential and institutional needs, and I know it's different from the uses that would happen in a restaurant parking lot, but I believe it's a somewhat equivalent example. A final point regarding sound is that sound intensity, and forgive me, I'm an English major, so I'm gonna give a little math here. Sound intensity follows the inverse square law. So, for example, if the distance from a source is doubled, increased by a factor of 2, then intensity is quartered, okay, so decreased by a factor of 4. So the farther we get away from a noise source, there's a much larger impact on sound as we move away. If the parking lots were set back further than the current location, as indicated in the minority report, it would certainly assist in mitigating the sound effects from the parking lot on residences. The current configuration, in my opinion, shows no attempt at mitigating or thinking about noise, only a barrier to add to aesthetics. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Hill. Alderman Toledo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, before I make my comments, I'd like to state that, especially since we have a lot of new aldermen, I did serve as vice chair of the Development Planning and Zoning Committee for 2 years prior to my service currently on the Finance Committee. And during that time, had the opportunity to learn a lot about how these types of cases proceed, and how we should and should not evaluate the testimony and evidence given in a case. So I do support approval of this conditional use for 2 reasons. And to be clear, that would be the fact that I support the minority report replacing the majority report. First off, I agree with the commission that all the standards for conditional use have been met by the applicant. That is what the commission is asked to do. That is how our zoning code is written, and that is what we are asked to do. We are not asked to provide our own evidence. We are not asked to provide our own opinion. We are asked to evaluate the evidence provided to the Zoning and Planning Commission, the discussion at the committee level, and to make a judgment based on the standards for a conditional use. I believe, as the commission did, that the applicant met those standards. The majority report, the second reason I support is the majority report states their main reason for not supporting the commission's conclusion was that the second standard was not met. And the rationale provided in the committee's majority report was that, quote, it, and they were referring to the record, did not show that property values will not be substantially diminished if houses are replaced by parking lots close to the immediate neighbors, end quote. The majority report does not provide any analysis of the record to support its claim. It simply states that it disagrees with the commission's conclusion. On the other hand, the commission clearly concluded that the second condition was met. Specifically, the commission states, quote, it was noted that the applicant submitted significant evidence that property values are not diminished or impaired due to proximity to parking lots and commercial uses. Folks are certainly welcome to their own interpretation of the evidence presented, but for me, there is no new information that would support a change from the commission's decision that the second standard was met. This is the only standard that the majority report stated was not met, and so therefore I would conclude that the majority feels that all the other standards were met. So for these 2 reasons, I support the approval of the conditional use as the commission and the minority report recommends. I have further comments as it relates to the conditions if the minority report succeeds in replacing the majority report. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Toledo. Alderman Dunn?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. These types of cases are very, very difficult. Anytime you have a commercial property business trying to make a change abutting residences, you get a lot of residents out against it. So it doesn't surprise me that we have that in this case, and I completely understand that. Up in the second ward where I serve, we had the Thornton's case a few years ago. The residents were very much against that, but the applicant made some adjustments to their plan that softened it and made it a little more friendly to the residents, along with the Delta Sonic expansion of the car wash that is going on right now. The residents were 100% against that, but the applicant was able to come up with a design that was workable. So, it doesn't surprise me that there's not an army of people for this particular application for conditional use, but there is an army against it. So I am in support of the minority report for a couple reasons. One, because per our zoning, this is acceptable to have a parking feature within 300 feet of a commercial business. That is acceptable per our zoning. As also was mentioned, our comprehensive plan, which was from 2009, but that is constantly updated with amendments, and we put a lot of effort into those. This area was looked at very closely in that plan, as were all the areas of the city, and there were some suggestions for development in that area, and specifically supported some type of parking feature in this area. There are parking lots next to homes scattered throughout the city. There's many instances of that. It was mentioned that some of them, there's none that have a liquor component. Well, that's not true. We have Elmhurst Liquor and Food up in the second ward that has a home right in back of it, and then we have Throw Nation, which is currently out of business, but it's a continual restaurant liquor establishment, and there's a couple homes right in back of that. So that doesn't seem to me to be a reason to balk at this particular application. The fourth reason is the commission approved this, and so I don't have any compelling reason to go against that. The commission approved it with some some additional conditions, which were enhancements to their plan to soften the transition into the residential property. The minority report expands on those. I think that's good. If you looked at the original plan, the parking lot, the profile was a lot bigger. It has shrunk. And you have setbacks, you have potential landscaping, safety was mentioned, but bollards are part of the condition, and it would be, looking at the spacing of those, you're not going to get a car through those. I know that having a fence there is probably, this project is certainly not preferable to the neighborhood. I completely understand that. they would prefer that this not happen. But I know people that their neighbors put up a fence, and they got a big white 6-foot fence there that they didn't have before. That's, and that happens in residential areas to separate properties, to provide privacy. Sometimes people don't like the looks of those. But with the minority report, there is an offer to put some landscaping there to help shield that. There's also focus on the lighting to ensure that that is not polluting the immediate area. The stormwater situation, we recognize that Eggleston and Spring is not a great area for flooding. It has become worse. With this, the design of this particular plan, it will be no worse, but most likely better in terms of stormwater management. For all these reasons, I am supporting the minority report. Thanks.
Thank you, Alderman Dunn. Alderman Bastido.
So first of all, I want to say that I am pro-business. It was one of the things I ran on in my campaign 6 months ago. I received a grant as soon as COVID hit and used it to support local restaurants. And so the reason I have helped author the majority report is because I feel that I am bound by our code, not the comprehensive plan that is just a planning document that, as you heard, was not adopted. I am bound by the code. And the code says that, yes, this is a permissible use if you meet the 7 conditions. And to be clear, the majority report said it did not meet the conditions, and we specifically laid out the second one. That does not mean that we think it met the other conditions, just to be clear. So let me read from our code. It says, no conditional use shall be recommended unless we find that the conditional use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity. And if you don't make that decision based on the vast amount of testimony on the record from the neighbors, which is the same as what you heard here tonight, I don't know what you make that judgment on, that it will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity. It also says, nor substantially diminish and impair property values within the neighborhood. And I'm happy to address that too, because the majority report said, the commission said that there is evidence that property values will not be diminished. And the majority report said the opposite, based on the exact same record, that there is not evidence of that. And I can tell you what that's based on, having lived with this for months and months and months. So there was a big binder presented to the commission, and it showed a lot of things. And this is what they were talking about when they said there was evidence that this will not diminish property values. It showed that there are some nice large homes in Elmhurst that have been built next to parking lots. That's true. That the EAVs of the 6 homes on this block, of those, 2 of them are adjacent to the car wash that's behind them. That the EAVs of the homes adjacent to the car wash are stable, and that the EAVs of other comparable homes in the block have been steady or going up. And all of that is true. There was absolutely nothing on the record to say that if you take a house that is next to another house and has a beautiful green area behind it, that it is worth the same amount of money as a house that literally has a parking lot wrapping around it, next to it and behind it. There was no evidence of that on the record. However, there was evidence, some of it, again, similar to what you heard tonight, of neighbors who said that their property values were less, being closer to Roberto's, being valued at less than the neighbors who were further away. And I disagree with people who say, first of all, I do come to that conclusion based on the record, but I also disagree with people who say that I can't use my own life experience and my own knowledge, because that's why this process includes coming to an elected body, because we are held accountable to the citizens of this city. We are humans and we use our own experience. We all know that a house on the ocean is worth much more than a house 3 houses from the ocean. We hear stories all the time about houses that are valued for more or less because of this or that. So it is okay to use your own judgment, in addition to what's on the record, to say that a house with a parking lot wrapped around it is not going to be worth the same as the house. And I got to go see the house when it had a White House next to it. It had lace curtains in the windows. A family had raised their kids there. And I'm sorry, that is drastically different than a house wrapped around a parking lot. This is actually not that unique of a neighborhood. Elmhurst is landlocked, and this railroad track that you talked about goes through all of town. And there are a lot of places in Elmhurst that are close to businesses, 1 or 2, 3 houses down from businesses, close to railroad tracks. We are landlocked, we're tight, and this isn't unique. It's not fair to say that this could never happen anywhere else. Even over by Villette and York, there is the same railroad track, there are businesses, there are residences. This is not a unique neighborhood. Like most of Elmhurst, these neighbors have invested in their house. Their number one asset is their house. And I believe we have a duty to protect the property values of the people that we represent. We did a training a few weeks ago, and I took some notes. And the man said that an important part of zoning is predictability. And he gave 2 examples. For example, your neighbor's fence is only going to be 6 feet tall, and you know that when you buy that house, that they cannot build a fence higher than 6 feet tall. It's about predictability. His second example is that your neighbor's house is zoned residential. These neighbors bought next to a house that was zoned residential. You can show as many examples as you'd like of parking lots next to houses. There is nothing like this. Nowhere in Elmhurst has someone bought a house and torn it down and turned it into a parking lot against the strong objection of the neighbors. And I'm sorry, but the strong objection of the neighbors goes to the standards. They do not meet these standards based on the objections of the neighbors. As a city, we tell people all the time what they can and can't do with their property. So yeah, it is about property rights, but just in the last 6 months, I've had to report to the city to go tell a man to move his car off of his front yard. He parked in the front yard. Someone else complained that their neighbors weren't mowing their yard. We tell people they have to mow their yard. We tell people they can't have chickens. We tell people as a city all the time what they can and can't do with their property. It's not as black and white as it's their property, they can do what they want with it. And that's why the code says in order to do this, you have to meet 7 standards. And I am very comfortable that this is not arbitrary or capricious. And why do I know that? Because we are using rational basis. And I'm very comfortable with that, and I ask the attorneys to review our opinion, knowing that someone, if this goes beyond this, would try to claim it was arbitrary, capricious, and I'm very comfortable that it's not. Again, I ask you to come to this as residents of the city, as the people who are part of an important process that starts with the commission, but also goes through the committee and the council. And I ask you to vote with the majority report. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Bastido. Alderman Park.
Thank you, Mayor. I have been listening and studying and talking with so many people. I only live a few blocks from the area that this has been happening. I run past it all the time on the Prairie Path. I have learned so much and have tried to help others learn about our processes to help them understand the code and how we can navigate these things so that there's state mandates and other things that are not just our city, so that something that can be very subjective is as least subjective as possible. And I am an avid student, I am a mathematician, and I have looked at this through and through, and it is my assessment that the applicant has met the conditions for a conditional use with the bordering property that they have, and I will be in support of the minority report. I think it's very detailed. I think it's very thorough. I think it shows a lot of thought, and there's a lot to be had in there and try to understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Park. Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the work that the commission did on this project, this application, and the committee, and the hours that were put in to get these reports here tonight. I am in support of the minority report. I do agree with the commission that the conditions have been met. I appreciate the public and the neighbors who came and provided input. They raised concerns around stormwater and traffic and safety and lighting, and I think those concerns were valuable and were taken into account when some of the conditions were established by the commission, as well as in the minority report. I appreciate everyone's work, and I will be voting in support of the minority report.
Thank you, Alderman Deuter. Alderman Honquist.
Thank you, Mayor. I, like everyone here, have thought about this case probably too much. I agree with most of the comments from both sides of this argument, quite frankly. I look at this neighborhood, and whenever we talk about a neighborhood, you have to look at many facets of a neighborhood. It's not just what's next door. In this case, as Alderman Dunn mentioned, you have commercial property next to residential property. That's a fact that exists throughout our city and many towns and cities across the country. And there's always a delicate balance between the commercial owners and the residential owners. And so I tend to lean towards property rights because the person that owns the lot should, by fact of owning the property, have some leeway to use that property as they see fit, assuming it meets the codes of the town or the city that they're in. So I have been thinking quite a bit about this. As has been said, I have former Alderman Leader in my head who said, regardless of what's on the books, it is up to us to make these decisions. We make policy, and we make these decisions. So I agree with Alderman Bastido that, and having chaired DPZ for some time, the commission makes a recommendation, the committee vets it, and the committee makes a recommendation to the council, but ultimately it's our responsibility to decide what we want to do or not do. And after thinking about this tonight, I am going to side with the majority report. Coming in, I was thinking the other way, quite frankly, but as I've thought through it tonight and I've listened to both sides, I believe that this particular project in this particular area is injurious to that neighborhood, and I think the parking could be addressed somewhere else in the community and still address Roberto's needs. So I will support the majority report. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Honquist. Anyone else? All right, Alderman Nudera.
Well, I'm new to this game, and I had the opportunity to go visit with the residents. And I put together a little note here. Is it a parking lot, or is it the use of the parking lot? Or is it both that drives the opposition? At the present, the absence of homes to the east of Roberto's is less than attractive in appearance in the neighborhood. It's very poorly taken care of. On the north side of Eggleston, east of the businesses, an argument could be made for the same unattractive appearance. It's an eyesore. If homes were built on both the south and the north side of Eggleston, the new homes would now create a buffer for the existing homes from the back end of the businesses, satisfying their request in opposition of the parking lot. However, the new homeowners would now have the position of living alongside the back end of an unattractive appearance of a business, much like the circumstances that are in hand. If a parking lot is designed in a way to make the area attractive and safe, would this benefit the neighborhood and the business as well? With all the conditions being met for just the actual lot, fences, landscaping, lighting, ballards, proper drainage, would this lower or raise property values? Maybe it's the use of the parking lot is what drives the opposition. Traffic, loud patrons, large gatherings, coming and going. The property owner would need to step in and assure the neighbors that they will follow operational restrictions to satisfy quality relationship with the neighborhood. The one major piece in this decision is that Roberto owns the property and has the rights to apply for the application and build and renovate on its own property if it meets the zoning codes. An example would be a resident may not approve of their neighbor putting in an outdoor entertainment area within the backyard because the potential for parties and music and large gatherings. This could be an aggravation and upsetting to the residents next door. However, the neighbor has the right to renovate their property. It is reasonable that both the resident and the next door neighbor communicate and work out arrangements to be considered of one another. I support the minority report because the commission and the zoning commission has moved forward on it.
Thank you, Alderman Udara. Last call for additional discussion. Seeing none, I will now reiterate, just so we know what we're doing. Before us is a motion to substitute by Alderman Polumsky to substitute the majority report for the minority report. If the motion fails, we will then move on and address the majority report. Is that correct? If the motion passes, the minority report will become the majority report, and there will be additional discussion on the minority report, recharacterized as the majority report. Any questions on procedure before we vote? Everyone understand? Very good. With that being said, I'll ask Clerk Tamer to call the roll.
Toludo.
Aye.
Cahill absent. Nudera.
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Conquest.
No.
Bastido.
No.
Mulliner.
No.
Brennan.
No.
Remus absent. Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Hill.
No.
Polumsky.
Aye.
Jensen.
No.
We have 6 ayes and 6 noes, and 2 absent.
6 ayes, 6 noes, and 2 absent. The mayor is only allowed to vote in the instance of a tie, and I vote in favor of the minority report. Thank you for your comments. Now, moving on with the business of the council.
Point of order?
Point of order.
There was discussion earlier about once the,
We're not done with this item.
Oh, sorry.
I just meant
I'm
for
sorry.
those who are going to see us in court.
you were moving on.
No, we are moving on with the business. All right, so the vote having been taken, we're now have the minority report substituted for the majority report, and we are open to discussion on that. Alderman Bastido.
Thank you. So the first thing I want to point out, because I've heard at least 2 aldermen mention this, shortly after the vote was taken at our committee, there was a draft sent around of a new plan by Alderman Polumsky. That is not the plan that is in the minority report. So I want to make sure everyone understands that what is in the minority report is not increasing the buffer. It is not giving more space. This is actually different. So honestly, I've heard 2 different aldermen who thought that what was included in the minority report is what they had seen earlier. So I just want to make sure everyone pulls up the minority report and looks at it, because this actually gives less space to the neighbors than what came out of the commission. And what I mean by that is and actually a lot less space than maybe a draft you would have seen earlier. So I just want to make sure everyone pulls up the minority report and sees that, because I'm going to be making a motion to approve something else that looks a lot closer to what came out of the commission, which means that the landscaping will be on the Roberto's property. Because as someone said, yes, trees do die, and I believe that that should be on Roberto's to replace any landscaping, to take care of any landscaping. And I believe that the commission was very clear that in order to meet the 7 standards, they put conditions on it, which included the time that the parking lot would close, that there would be a fence with landscaping facing the neighbors, and that there were a couple other conditions. What were the other conditions? That that it was the Plan B, which is different than what is in your minority report. So that's the first thing I wanted to say, is that I will be making a motion to put the landscaping and the, I guess, the responsibility of taking care of the landscaping on the property of the applicants.
All right, just to be clear, Alderman Bastido, are you making a motion, or are you just, at this point, are you just highlighting the difference for right now?
Well, I guess first I did want to highlight the difference, make sure people knew what they're looking at, but I guess I might as well, since I'm talking and I don't have my mask on, I'll make a motion to, and I don't know if I would base it on, I guess I'll base it on the condition that the commission put on, which is that Roberto's put up a fence with landscaping facing the neighbors, and it's on their property. And if they need to leave enough room for them to take care of the landscaping, then they can do that.
All right, so your motion is to require the applicant to install landscaping on the east side of the fence on applicant's property. Have I said that correctly?
Yes.
I think I would correct one thing, point of order, just a correction. I think I would say to the adjacent property, because there is a portion of the property that is going to be, the fence will be on the south edge.
Very good. So motion to require the applicant to install landscaping on the adjacent side of,
Right.
on applicant's property. Okay. We'll just say on applicant's property. Motion to require applicant to install landscaping on an applicant's property. We'll say outside the fence. Is that what you're saying?
Let's get a second on this one.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Alderman Jensen, second. Does everyone understand the motion? So the motion, the minority report right now has a fence, and we'll call it on the property line, with a reimbursement for any landscaping that the neighbor who's adjacent to the fence may want to install on the property if they so choose. And that landscaping would be owned by the neighbor, installed on the neighbor's property, and would be their responsibility to maintain it. The motion, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to say that the landscaping would be required to be installed by the applicant with enough room on the applicant's property to both install it and maintain it, and would be outside of the fence from the outside of the applicant's property.
Question.
Alderman Honquist.
So what I first heard is Alderman Bastido make a motion to return it to what the commission recommended, which I think was similar to what you just outlined. So the question is, are we going back to what the commission recommended, or are we creating a new condition of which we're going to hold the...
So I'm intending to take it back to what the commission recommended, because that is more favorable to the neighbors. And it's because of what we just amended, but also the time that's on there.
All right, I think then to do that is we need to, I need to know what the commission report says so that the other aldermen know that upon which they may be called to vote.
Well, I'm sure the two biggest differences I saw was that this gave, what we just talked about, the landscaping being on the neighbor's property, but also the time. The commission said one of their conditions was that the parking lot closed at 11 p.m.
All right, let's take a moment and we'll see if we can pull up the commission report.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
I have a copy. I can read it.
thank you, Alderman Toledo.
This particular condition, the commission,
Alderman Toledo is going to read us the conditions, so please.
the report states how the commission voted on various conditions, so they went one by one. This particular motion, Commissioner Garland moved to add a condition to require an opaque 8-foot fence with landscaping on the resident's side. Commissioner Burns seconded. That is the only detail provided in the report.
All right, and then Alderman Toledo, I believe, is trying to, your Alderman Bastido, is trying to add something about lighting as well, and that the recommendation in the report on that was,
Commissioner Pittman moved to add, may I?
please.
Commissioner Pittman moved to add a condition to require the lighting be turned off at 11 p.m. Commissioner Garland seconded.
All right, my recommendation for this, and it's your motion, is that we take those two separately for the ease of discussion, unless any alderman objects to that. So the first, if we want to have the first motion be that to require the applicant to install landscaping on the residence side of the property. Did I read that correctly, Alderman Toledo?
But I'm sorry, I think it needs to be clear that it's on the applicant's property, because based on the discussion at the commission, that was very clearly the intent.
Okay.
However, I think leaving that word out maybe is more confusing.
So, motion to require the applicant to install landscaping on applicant's property on residence side. Okay. We all agree on what we're talking about? Everyone okay over here? All right, so that's the motion. Do you have a point of order?
Not a point of order. I thought you said.
All right. We need a second to bring it before the council. Alderman Jensen. Well, we're on a different motion here now. All right, so we have a motion by Alderman Bastido, second by Alderman Jensen to require the installation of landscaping on the applicant's property on the residence side. All right, everyone understand the motion? Now, discussion on that motion. Alderman Palumski.
Thank you, Mayor. I would have enthusiastically discussed this at committee. This is a committee type discussion. Conditions imposed are a fundamental component of a report. And if it is, we're going to be weighing in as, you know, I may have an opinion and so do my fellow committee members, then we get into the area of the majority of the committee is discussing the fundamental pieces of a report. You know, my question becomes then, should this go back to committee? But I just want to reiterate, the reason why we didn't discuss these details in committee is I had intended to, and it became clear that the committee did not want to proceed with allowing the conditional use, and in hand in hand in that are these conditions. So because there was a vote to deny the conditional use, there was not an opportunity to discuss this in committee. I will say there's been a lot of discussion, and Alderman Bastido brought this up, and I'm happy to pass this around. I've got different examples, like what about this, and would that work? And the one issue, if you take a look at the commission, a couple points, I think, especially with the lighting and the landscaping. Landscaping's not defined. So in theory, it could be some tall grasses on the, you know, on the side of the fence that faces the neighbors. What was added is up to $58,000 of additional landscaping reimbursed by the applicant on top of having a fence. Now, if I could have heard, if we could have engaged with the neighbors, and if we learned, hey, they'd rather have $58,000 of landscaping on the applicant's property without a fence, or if there is an agreement to allow the applicant to access the property if necessary, these are things that I would have liked to have vetted in committee. I am all for proceeding in a way that would be beneficial to neighbors. I do think that we are about to, if we are going to engage here, this is going to turn into a committee discussion starting at 10 o'clock.
Well, we are past the committee, and unless someone's moving to bring it back to committee, then we have an amendment, and for whatever reason it wasn't discussed at committee. We've got a report that's been adopted, and now there's a motion to amend. So I suggest at this point that you, and you don't have to do it this moment, but it would be appropriate to address comments to the full council of whether you believe the motion is the better way to proceed, or if not, the way you had the landscaping treated in the report as you presented it. If you'd like to pass on to someone else, we can come back to you.
Sure, I'd like to hear some comments
right.
on this.
Alderman Brennan.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have a question with respect to the report now before us. So the setbacks are different than a diagram that I saw earlier. Is this representative of what was approved at the commission?
No.
Mr. Daniel, when you're on the council, you'll be able to speak, but until then, no, this is not an audience participation. Thank you. Alderman Bastido.
So no, this was not what came out of the commission, and this was not seen at the committee. Which is, I mean, it's perfectly fine to come up with a new plan. I'm just saying this is not what the commission approved.
So I think is your concern is...
So my question is, I've seen specs that had further setbacks, and, I'm not going to support this report regardless, but I'm just curious of the origin of this document that's in the minority report. That's all.
Alderman Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. It seems like some of the discussion is the fact that the committee did not have the discussion that maybe would be beneficial for them to have about these changes. So I don't remember the rules of order, but at this point, can we recommend that this be sent back to committee? And if so, would this motion have to be handled before then, or could the discussion be interrupted by sending it back to committee, or a motion to send it back to committee?
Let me look in my crystal ball.
No, it cannot go back to committee.
It's too late. I mean, how would you do it now? You'd have to remove the amendment and change it.
I think the problem with sending it back at this point is if it were brought to the floor and we hadn't voted on it, we could send it back to committee. But at this point, we've taken, the report has been delivered from the committee to the council, and anyone can disagree, but we've taken substantive action and we've substituted the minority report for the majority report. So the topic and document are now in the hands of the council. I think the report has pulled out of the committee station and is on the council track. Alderman Mulliner.
I just want to make a comment about how things work in committees. If there's 3 members of a committee or a majority of a committee that makes a decision that they feel that...
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Alderman Toledo.
I think we have a motion on the floor regarding a condition, amendment to a condition regarding landscaping. Should we be discussing that, or?
We should, but I was trying to consider whether, and a very good point, I was trying to consider whether there was a motion to send it back to committee that would be an intervening motion, like a motion to table that would supersede, but I don't think we have that here. Alderman Mulliner, are you on the main motion, or?
I'll leave it alone.
All right. Alderman Palumsky.
Thank you, Mayor. So the condition as it stands lacks some specifics. So to say landscaping on the applicant's property.
Just to be clear, are you saying the condition or the
Condition-
motion?
I'm sorry, the condition that was passed and approved, or that was recommended by the Zoning Planning Commission is vague in what they mean by landscaping. So it's not, doesn't say what that means. It could be rocks. It could be sod. It could be anything. So I think if there is a motion to amend it, I think there would need to be also a motion to define it.
Okay, and can you point to me, because I think if you defined arborvitae of a certain height, that would be favorable to the neighbors more like, than you said, like tall grass. So is that in yours? I'm happy to use that same
Alderman
language.
Bastido,
you had.
let's, we got to do this like walkie-talkies, one at a time. So
Currently, the Zoning Planning Commission has a bulleted list. Okay. All right, I have this somewhere. Okay, the Zoning Planning Commission has 5 bullets. It says, for the landscaping piece, require an opaque 8-foot fence with landscaping on the residence sides. So that is vague, and it could mean $50 worth. So the minority report says $58,000 worth of landscaping that could be chosen by the adjacent property owners by, if they want to have it reimbursed, they can choose whatever they'd like there. So if we are going to amend, if we're going to say, all right, we're amending this with the conditions that were recommended by the Zoning Planning Commission, I just wonder if the council would want to actually reconsider that one, because there's no detail here. And that's part of the reason why, in discussing back and forth with staff, a concern to say, well, wait a minute, if we're just saying landscaping, what exactly does that mean? And how can we find a way to enhance the neighbor's view? So.
all right, other aldermen, Alderman Honquist.
Thank you, Mayor. I recall a case, I can't specifically pull it out right now, where we put a basic set of standards that were then going to get worked out between staff and the applicant and the neighbors. It may have been on EECC, I can't remember, but it allowed us to pass this, to your earlier point, to move it forward, so the minority report would become the majority report. We would pass it with, there needs to be fencing and landscaping yet to be determined between staff who would oversee it and the 2 parties that are involved. It does require that the basics of what is in the minority report are followed through on as the city council passes it, while allowing some details to be worked out that's administered by staff.
So when you say the minority report, you mean if amended with the motion?
Correct. If we pass that, we can put language in there, City Attorney Storino, I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but I recollect a case to that. It gave some flexibility for staff to work with the applicant.
I think you're going to have to put in specificity like 8-foot arborvitae.
Yeah, what the city attorney is mentioning is that that's probably a situation where there's a consent to do it here, and presupposing cooperation between the applicant and the neighbors is something that has not been productive in the past. So I don't think we could do that. I think we'd have to put the specificity in of exactly what we are requiring of the applicant on this motion. Otherwise, as Alderman Polumsky says, they could put in some tall grass, and that's landscaping. Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, reading, Alderman Polumsky just read it, I'll read it one more time. A condition to require an opaque 8-foot fence with landscaping on the residence side. I think you could make the case that the report that, is now the majority report, operationalizes this. I think there's, where there is a provision for landscaping on the residents' side. I think part of when these recommendations come to the committee's charged with really operationalizing it. How is this going to be implemented? I very much appreciate the concerns around code enforcement. If you're responsible for maintaining property that's on the other side of an 8-foot fence, that to me, is not really something that is practical to expect, that the person who can't see it is responsible for maintaining it and actually doesn't even have good access to it. So I appreciate that in the report that came out with one of the committee members' support, that there was thought given to how would this really work. So I don't think, unless there's language that really spells that out in a way that I think is workable, I don't think that we should change the way this is addressed in the current report.
So you're speaking against the motion, correct?
Against the motion,
All right.
correct.
Alderman, let's go see Alderman Dunn.
I think also the commission point does not indicate whether the landscaping should be on the resident's property or the applicant's property. It just says that it's on that side. But I think that we would need to operationalize this if we were to move this back away from the residents on all sides, say 3 feet. What we would do is we would compress the aisles by 3 feet. I don't know if that's still workable from a safety standpoint in the 2 parking lots that go north-south, and then the one leg that goes heads towards the east. So I can't comment that this would work. I don't know if the applicant would agree to it. If from an engineering standpoint, moving that fence back 3 feet so you can move the landscaping back 3 feet, if it kind of wrecks the whole design, I don't know. So it's hard to say.
Alderman Bastido.
I just want to make it clear that what came out of the commission did not have the fence on the property line. The commission approved landscaping on the applicant's property. They couldn't have, they wouldn't have, they were very clear that they were not telling the neighbors what to put on their property. This was just discussing the applicant's property, and the conditions that came out of there were talking about the applicant's property, having a fence with landscaping facing the neighbors. That is what came out of the commission. It's not a gray area. So if we want to make it more clear by saying that the landscaping needs to be at least 6 feet high, that is fine. But to say that it now has to be even closer encroaching on the neighbor's yard, and that they have to front the money for it, thousands of dollars, to plant this stuff and then hope that they can be repaid quickly, that is putting even more of a hardship on the neighbors, and I cannot support that.
All right, just so we cannot at this point ask the applicant what they would or wouldn't accept. We're not reopening negotiations, so I understand we'll have to also consider the practicality of trying to change someone's plan at the 11th hour. You may discuss, we will continue to debate any additional motions. If your concern is the reimbursement, you're also welcome to make a motion about, whether the money's advanced. I'm not sure what the concerns are. I just want to make sure that we're considering all options and the realities of what we can do up here. All right. Still on the motion to require installation of landscaping by the applicant on the applicant's property outside the fence on the resident's side. Alderman Toledo.
Thank you. Alderman Polumsky, can you speak to what Alderman Dunn raised? I mean, through your own creation of these conditional uses as it relates to the landscaping. if the landscaping and the fence were on the applicant's property, can the property be used for a parking lot?
Alderman Palumski.
There were several discussions. There's one, this is me talking with staff talking with the applicant. And I agree. I thought, what could we do to help benefit the neighbors? Could we have more of a buffer? And this, I have an example here that has an additional one side 24 feet setback. And I believed to have the same number of parking spaces. So again, this was, I didn't get a thumbs up or a thumbs down from the neighbors if they would like this more or less than other options. There are telephone poles in there and a couple things. Whether or not the applicant would approve it, we don't have an official review of how this would impact safety. However, it seemed that at one point, the applicant was willing to accept these additional setbacks. That said, there was not, I want to say, an understanding that those could be maintained in a manner that if it is, that the applicant is responsible for maintaining them, that there wouldn't be some responsibility of the neighbors to enforce it. It is a change from what is preceded, which is, we are allowed to make those changes. It came down to, and I could, I don't know if I can suspend the rules to ask Assistant City Manager Mike Kopp to answer some questions here because he did a lot of he did the interfacing with the applicant.
Well, we might be able to, but I think the question that Alderman Toledo is asking is if you moved the fence back to accommodate the landscaping, would the parking work? Do we know it would, or it wouldn't, or we don't know?
It appears it would. It appears there would be some spaces lost, but not a significant number. So, and I'm looking at two different examples here. So that it could work, that it would be losing some spaces, but that to do that, the applicant had stated that they would need access from their own property, so not have the fence in between.
So it sounds like we don't know if it'll work or not.
In the end, it came down to the reason why the condition is the way it is because
just,
that's
I
what
mean, I don't want
worked.
to
Yeah, that
cross-examine,
this, just generally setting this back and allowing a fence would not work. I imagine there would be a possibility of having that without the fence, but again, then I feel like we need to sit back down at the negotiating table.
Alderman Toledo. You got your question answered, all right. Other aldermen? All right, well, Mr. Daniel, you can keep your hand up, but I'm not going to call you. I just want to let you know that. Mr. Daniel, you're out of order. You're out of order in many ways, all right? Now let's proceed here. So we have a motion, just so everyone's clear, to require the applicant to install landscaping on the resident side of the fence on the applicant's property. All right. Clerk Tamer, call the roll.
Toledo?
Sorry, can you restate what it is?
Yes, the motion is to require the applicant to install landscaping on the resident side of the fence, but on the applicant's property.
Point of order, just want to clarify. So the motion is to substitute the condition in the minority report that pertains to landscaping and substitute it with the condition that came out of the commission. So
No, it's, this is now the majority report.
It's now the majority report, so I
okay,
think it's an
I'm sorry.
amendment
We're calling it the
to the
majority,
majority
yes.
report.
So the report before us, that
Well,
the
yeah.
motion is to to amend the condition that pertains to landscaping so that it reads like the commission said.
Right, so there would be no
So there's no
reimbursement.
definition of landscaping.
Right.
Okay.
Everyone understand that? There's
But it's, I'm sorry.
no, right. So so the majority report as it now states is that the fence will be on the property line. The residents can put in landscaping and apply for reimbursement as set forth in the report. The amendment says instead of putting it in by the residents and applying for reimbursement, the applicant will be the one required, not optional, to install landscaping. It'll be on the resident's side of the fence, but located on the applicant's property. Make sure we're all clear on it. Ask any questions. It'll get more confusing as we go on. All right, Alderman Plumsky?
I have a question. I just
Sure.
would like to know what the landscaping, when we're talking about the landscaping, are we saying like the words from the commission report? Or are we saying it as landscaping is defined?
We're not incorporating by reference
Okay,
the
all right,
commission's
thank you.
report.
All
It's
right.
it's just exactly what I said.
Thank you.
And I understand there's problems with it, but, all right, Alderman Dunn.
And just one more comment on this. I can't support the motion. I don't think the residents would be comfortable with landscapers wandering around in their yard at 7 in the morning. I just think it's better that it would be their own own material on their own property to take care of. I just can't believe they would think that that's a good idea.
Alderman Bastido.
To be clear, they would not be going on the neighbor's property. They would have to install landscaping on their property and maintain it. If they have to move it back another foot to maintain it, that's fine. But there's nothing in this saying that they're going to go on the neighbor's property. I think that would be asking for a problem. So no, it's not.
Just to clarify the visual, I'm looking at the property on the south side abutting the property, and there's a lot of backyard. And they might be sitting out in that backyard, and people are wandering around back there, fixing up landscaping on the
Right.
applicant's property.
Yeah,
But
no, I
it could
understand
be a
that, as
little
long as
bit
they're on their property.
obtrusive.
Yeah.
Alderman Toledo.
I'm just going to explain why I'm going to vote for the amendment, and that's because, A, I think it is consistent with every other landscaping application and a conditional use that I am aware of since I've served as an alderman. And secondly, I think that it's reasonable condition and it's consistent with the intent of the commission. Thank you.
Okay. Last call on this one. Clerk Tamer.
Toledo?
Aye.
Cahill, absent. Nudera?
Aye.
Park?
No.
Conquest?
Aye.
Bastido?
Aye.
Mulliner?
Aye.
Brennan?
Aye.
Verimus, absent. Deuter?
No.
Dunn?
No.
Hill?
Aye.
Palumski?
No.
Jensen? 8 ayes, 4 nays, 2 absent.
8 ayes, 4 nays, 2 absent. The motion passes. Additional discussion on the majority report is now amended.
Mayor.
Alderman Brennan.
So what happens if the report were to fail at this point?
Well,
We haven't approved the report.
we haven't. So the report is to approve what the commission said is now amended by this report. If it fails, then we're done.
No, but we've only voted to substitute the minority for the majority. And my question is,
The
the
majority
majority report, if it were to fail, what would happen?
Then it's, you could think of it this way. It's as if the committee came out with this majority report saying, we recommend approving the commission's recommendation to allow this conditional use. If it fails, then the conditional use does not go forward. So it'd be like, I'll just forget just this one, but if it was someone wanted to put a new porch up and the commission said, yes, we recommend it, and then DPZ voted 3-0, we recommend the commission's report, and it was voted no, then it's over.
Thank you.
So in a sense, you can try to, you don't know if it's going to pass or not, so you want to make it in as good of a condition you can before it is voted on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Alderman Bastido.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the majority report to reflect the same times that came out of the commission's report. So right now, the majority report says that the parking lot will stay open until 12 a.m. I would like that to amend that to say 11 p.m., which is what came out of the commission.
All right, so I'm not going to refer to it as the majority report. We'll just make your motion that you are moving to amend the majority report to have the lights, the light turnoff time reduced from 12 o'clock to 11 o'clock.
Correct.
Second by Alderman Mulliner. Okay, so the motion before the council is to amend the time by which lights must be turned off from midnight till 11 o'clock p.m. Discussion on the motion. Alderman Bastido, would you like to lead off?
No, I'll just simply say that I think the commission created conditions that they thought met the standards, and so I would like it to be as close to that as possible. This is my last amendment, but I'd like it to be 11 p.m.
Alderman Jensen.
I'm going to vote against that amendment because for all the reasons that Alderman Palomsky stated before, that it's not enforceable and it could be easily challenged. That could be 2 a.m. So I'd vote against that.
Other discussion. Alderman Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. I would vote for that. I would say that the 2 a.m. time at the city lot is arbitrary and not connected to specified times in the municipal code. In other words, that could be changed, and a 12 o'clock time is arbitrary, and it seems like an 11 o'clock time would be just as amenable to the neighbors as any other changes that we've considered here.
All right. Alderman Dunn.
Just a clarification. So if you're parked there and you come out, it's after 11, the lights are out. Is there a supplemental light source? I mean, certainly there's ambient light, but in terms of the visibility, it is still at a reasonable time, mostly for the workers that are coming out at that time. Do we know the specifics on that or no?
I don't know about the ambient light or what the conditions would be.
Okay. I'm okay with 11 o'clock because I think the lights go off, but you could go get your car later than that.
Thank you, Alderman Dunn. Other discussion. Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. My concern on this one is around enforceability. I think midnight makes sense with the operations of the restaurant, which is, where the folks who are using this lot are likely to be coming from. I don't think it's realistic to expect that the lights would go off, but there still might be people who are using that lot. I think for safety purposes, especially someone who might have been waiting on tables and walking out to a parking lot without lights on. I don't think that's the right approach from a safety perspective. So I think it's important that for as long as the lot is in use, that it's also lit. And I think to stop the use at 11 o'clock when the restaurant, on certain nights, not every night, but maybe weekends, has a use that continues beyond that. I think that becomes an enforceability issue, and I would envision lots of calls to aldermen, lots of calls to the police, and lots of complaints. So I think to make it something that's more easily enforceable, it should stay at midnight.
Additional discussion? All right. The amendment that we are about to vote on is to change the time by which lights must be turned off from midnight to 11 o'clock p.m.
Toludo?
Nay.
Cahill absent. Nudera?
Nay.
Park?
No.
Conquest?
Aye.
Bastido?
Aye.
Mulliner,
Aye.
Brennan,
Aye.
Varimus, absent, Deuter,
No.
Dunn,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Palumski,
No.
Jensen.
No.
We have 6 ayes, 6 noes, and 2 absent.
I'm going to vote against the motion. All right, so that motion fails. We have the majority report as amended with respect to landscaping. Additional discussion. All right. Alderman Palumski.
Just have a question. I just want to verify, so the way the report stands has no standards for landscaping, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Clerk Tamer.
Actually, Mayor, so I'm still confused on the origin of this schematic. I mean, what is the source of this? Is this something that was?
Of the, attached to the majority, now the majority report?
Is
All right,
that,
so-
was that through the, working with staff? I'm just confused on how, if this wasn't submitted with the applicant, or if this isn't what this applicant submitted, how are we interpreting and voting on something that we're not sure the applicant will even comply with?
Well, as with any report that would come before DPZ, there will be, and again, it's backwards because it's not the majority report, but if it were, the majority would be talking to the applicant and saying, this is what I'm thinking of, does it work? And Alderman Palumski has indicated she's talked to staff, and staff presumably has talked to the applicant. So the origin is the author of the minority report talking to staff and who's checking with the applicant to see if it would work. I have not participated in those discussions. Alderman Palumski, you can.
So what has taken shape is, where I started from had larger setbacks. And what was relayed to me is that to agree to a larger setback, first of all, it means losing parking spaces, which I think could be okay, if it could be a benefit to the neighbors, but it would not allow for also a solid opaque fence to be installed too. So then it came down to, we hadn't heard from the neighbors if they were to choose one or the other, what it would be. So a way to try to achieve both would be to have the fence, solid fence, and compensate any neighbor who sought reimbursement if they wanted to add to their own parcel to do that. So it was my best effort working through staff to achieve both of those. So does the applicant have to agree? No, but it has been our practice that we do that unless we've, to the greatest extent possible that we think is reasonable based on our other decisions, I guess.
Sorry, we're talking procedural things.
I think that's it. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Alderman, we'll go with Mulliner. Alderman Hill.
Go with Hill. Go with Hill.
Who's got their hand up?
I do.
Alderman Hill, all right.
So if I can rephrase this so I understand the comments by Alderman Brennan and Alderman Palumski in the process, what we have here is a report that has not been vetted by the applicants, nor the neighbors, nor the other members of the committee, so it's a single author report. That is subsequently vetted by us as the majority report, and then subsequently voted on us as accepting the report or rejecting the report, but this is a single author report. Is that a correct supposition that it's not vetted by, other than the council itself, like nobody else, it's vetted by one person on the committee?
I don't know that I mean, that's not true, because the alderman, if you haven't been talking, I know all the other men have been talking, so it's vetted that way, and it's vetted by the discussion, it's vetted by the fact that you've got the report, you've read it, you've asked questions. So just like anything else that comes out of a committee, again, that's what a minority report is. I've been on both sides of it. And so here, the majority report is the former minority report. We had a motion to approve the majority report. We substituted the minority report. We amended it, and here's where we are. Realistically, pragmatically, I don't think the applicant, that it would have proceeded this far if the applicant had, I don't know about the last amendment, but in terms of where the minority report was, I'm sure they were in the loop there somewhere, which is the way it's done.
All right, I'm a
Alderman Mulliner?
Just a comment, as a report comes forward and as we make amendments to it, that report then becomes an ordinance. And at that point, if the applicant wants to continue with the project, they have to abide by what is in that ordinance. So if we say that we expect the lights to be off at midnight, then the lights have to be off at midnight. If we expect the landscaping to be on the fence on the residential side, there has to be landscaping on the residential side. That's what our ordinance is going to say when this is completed, if this report passes. So that's the way the system works.
Correct. I agree. Alderman Honquist?
I agree with Alderman Mulliner. Thank you, Mayor. But is there not an opportunity to amend the report before it becomes an ordinance?
I'm sorry, take your, just,
I would love to.
yeah, I was, put it back on. I see why, yeah.
My question is, I believe after we pass the report tonight, if there are changes required after further discussion with the applicant, that can be amended before we pass the ordinance.
That is correct. And if the neighbors got together with the applicant and said, hey, we don't want this, but we want you to just give us the money or pay it up front, if they work something out, they can come back and it can be amended. Once the ordinance is passed, you got to start over. The deans of the council agree. All right. Additional discussion. So let me just tell you where we are so everyone understands. We had a motion to pass the majority report. Then there was a motion to substitute the minority report for the majority report. So that minority report is now the majority report, and we have a motion on the table to pass it. And then we had a motion to amend it with respect to landscaping that was passed, so that's now part of the majority report. And we had a motion to change the lighting aspect, which did not pass. So it's the minority report with the landscaping motion to amend it. Everyone clear where we are? All right. Any additional discussion? All right. Thank you for your time, everyone. Let's get on with the vote.
Toludo?
Aye.
Cahill, absent. Nudera?
Aye.
Park?
Aye.
Conquest?
Aye.
Bastido?
No.
Mulliner?
No.
Brennan?
No.
Verimus, absent. Deuter?
Aye.
Dunn?
Aye.
Hill?
No.
Palumski?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
8 ayes, 4 nays, 2 absent.
8 ayes, 4 nays, 2 absent. The motion passes. All right. We're going to move on to other business. So if anyone wants to stay, a lot of exciting topics, but Alderman Mulliner?
Are we going to complete the rest of the committee report?
Yes, I'm just telling the people who are here that we're moving on to the rest of the agenda, in case anyone wanted to understand where we were. All right. 9.3, Clerk Kamer.
7.
Oh, 7, where'd I get? 6? Oh, there we go. 7, committee reports. 7.3, not 9.3, yeah.
Therefore, the Development, Planning, and Zoning Committee recommends that the City Council approve a resolution to authorize a 60-day extension to letter of intent by and between Ryan Companies U.S., Inc., and the City of Elmhurst for the purchase of property located at 108 North Haven Road, Elmhurst, Illinois. The city attorney is hereby directed to prepare the necessary documents for city council approval. Signed, Danny Palumsky, Chair, Mark A. Mulliner, Vice Chair, and Emily Bastido, Alderwoman, Ward 6.
All right, we can have a motion to put this before the council. Alderman Mulliner, second by Alderman Palumsky. This is one that you want to carry, go ahead.
You can carry it if you want.
No, go ahead. If you know what it is, go ahead.
This is just an extension to the letter of intent with the Ryan Group. We've kind of run the gamut on that letter, the original letter, so we want to make sure that we have time to complete the zoning process. And this does not commit us to anything. It's the same thing that we did before. It's just a situation where we just need to extend it a few more days. And it'll be a 60-day extension because of the fact that we just need to give the zoning process the time to run through.
Thank you. Additional discussion, Alderman Palumsky.
We learned that time is of the essence, but after our committee, so it's not in our committee report. So I'd like to make a motion to amend to add that we recommend that we suspend the rules.
I think we did already.
Wait a
didn't
minute. I talked with Mike Kopp that we're supposed to be amending the report.
If it's not in the report.
Point of order. I believe we can just suspend the rules when we get to that under 10A, 10.1, I mean.
Okay.
If it's not in the report.
Either way.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you. Okay,
Okay.
either way, that's fine. I withdraw my motion.
Thank you, Alderman Palumsky. Any questions? All right, Clerk Tamer, call the...
Toludo,
Aye.
Cahill, absent, Nudera,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Conquest,
Aye.
Bastido. Aye. Mulliner,
Aye.
Brennan,
Aye.
Remus, absent, Deuter,
Aye.
Dunn,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Palumsky,
Aye.
Jensen. 12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
All right, 12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent. The ordinance passes, or the report passes, rather. Item 7.4.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Public Affairs and Safety Committee that the City Council authorize the recommended changes to Central Business District parking and direct the city attorney to prepare the appropriate documents. Signed, Marty Deuter, Chair, Jacob Hill, Vice Chair, and James A. Nudera, 5th Ward Alderman.
Motion to put the report before the council, Alderman Deuter. Second, Alderman Hill. Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. The report before us tonight reflects changes that have been discussed for years. When the Addison deck was completed in 2016 and added 690 spaces, discussions began about parking system changes that would guide drivers to the deck in order to increase turnover and availability of street spaces, which are always in highest demand. Formal consideration of any changes was continually delayed pending completion of one major project or another. The pandemic, which interrupted utilization of commuter parking, and the upcoming implementation of a more effective and efficient parking enforcement system prompted the committee to move forward on the changes before you tonight. I want to thank the Elmhurst City Center staff and Board of Directors and city staff for their input, which was instrumental in guiding these changes. There are a handful of things we are aiming to accomplish. Most importantly, to increase the availability of on-street parking spaces. Also to direct longer-term parkers to the parking garages, to provide more customer parking south of the tracks, to provide part-time employee parking south of the tracks, and to simplify the paid parking system. To support those goals, the committee is recommending the following changes. Change all on-street 3-hour spaces to 2-hour spaces. Change all parking structure 3-hour spaces to 4-hour spaces. Change all spaces on the first floor of the Adelaide parking deck to customer parking. Change 11 spaces on the third floor of the Adelaide deck to part-time employee parking. Change 12 spaces currently designated as Elmhurst History Museum parking only to customer parking, and designate all non-employee permit spaces as pay parking, permit or daily fee, to simplify the paid parking system and to be available to customers who will be parked longer than 4 hours. If approved by the council, the changes will be phased in beginning the week of October 18th. Changes to the customer and part-time employee spaces in the Adelaide deck will be first, followed by the on-street time change and the deck time change. Happy to answer any questions and ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion? No amendments?
So boring.
All right, no discussion. All right, Clerk Tamer, call the roll.
Toludo.
Aye.
Cahill, absent. Nudera.
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Conquest.
Aye.
Bastido.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
Verimus, absent. Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Jensen. 12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent. Report 7.4 passes. Item 8, reports and recommendations of appointed elected officials. I just want to say that a week ago Sunday, the city played the University of Elmhurst team, and we lost. Only by about 16 runs, but next year, as City Manager Grabowski said, practice starts tomorrow, so rest up. Good game, and we thank Dave Oberg and the museum staff, as well as Troy Aiken and his victorious team for a very fine event. Also, second item, Fire Department will be holding an open house celebrating National Fire Prevention Week this Sunday, October 10th, from noon to 4 at Station 2, which is south on York Street. Educational and fun. Bring the kids. Hopefully they're your own. All right. City Manager.
I have nothing to add. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Agenda item 9, ordinances 9.1, Clerk Tamer.
An ordinance accepting and authorizing the mayor to execute stipulation between the City of Elmhurst and LKNY LLC, DBA Elmhurst Extended Care Facility regarding the termination of conditional use permit to expand an existing established nursing home for 200 East Lake Street and 193-197 East Fremont, Elmhurst, Illinois.
We have a motion to put this before the council. Alderman Mulliner. Alderman Honquist seconds. Thank you. Let me tee this one up. This ties into the failed Elmhurst Extended Care Facility conditional use. As the council may recall, they did not start their project within the time constraints of the conditional use ordinance. I was schooled to learn that despite the fact that it says if you don't start by date certain, it's done, but I was told, and I see that we have to take affirmative action to pass an ordinance to cancel out the conditional use. My hope was trying something a little different, which is instead of sending it back to the commission to revisit the topic, to send it back to DPZ, to send it back to us, that we would enter into a stipulation, which is just a legal agreement that they would sign off on saying, yes, we agree that our conditional use ordinance is terminated. Took a little longer than I expected, but I think it worked out well. Andy Acker, one of our city attorneys, received the signed ordinance by Elmhurst Extended Care, so this action will allow me to sign the stipulation which will terminate the conditional use. Any questions? All right, Clerk Tamer.
Toludo.
Aye.
Cahill, absent. Nudera.
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Conquest.
Aye.
Bastido.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
Verimus, absent. Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Jensen. 12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent. The ordinance passes. 9.2, Clerk Tamer.
An ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of a non-exclusive license agreement by and between Elmhurst Park District and the City of Elmhurst, DuPage and Cook Counties, Illinois. See item 6.10.
Motion to bring this before council. Alderman Deuter, second by Alderman Hill. Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the follow-up to a report passed earlier. The Park District will be holding their Fall Fest on October 16th in the same manner that they have previously. And in order to have the final approval before the event, we needed to suspend the rules to approve this tonight.
Thank you, Alderman Deuter. Discussion? Clerk Tamer.
Toludo.
Aye.
Cahill, absent. Nudera.
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Conquest.
Aye.
Bastido.
Aye.
Mulliner,
Aye.
Brennan,
Aye.
Verimus absent, Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Palumski,
Aye.
Jensen. 12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent. Ordinance 9.2 passes. 9.3, Clerk
Point of
Tamer.
order, Mayor?
Yes.
So 9.3 is related to 10.2, but can't exist without 10.2 being approved?
That is correct.
I think isn't it related to 6.14?
They're related.
They're related.
9.3 and 10.2.
Yeah, if I may.
One's a resolution, one's an ordinance.
Yeah, as I understand it, the report had the purchase of the equipment and then the installation of the equipment.
Was separate.
Yeah, and I believe one resolution purchases, and then item 10 is the.
So they can be independent?
They can, yes.
So it's possible for us to reject the resolution but approve the
It
ordinance?
is possible, but I wouldn't recommend it.
That's sort of my point, but okay.
The reason, Alderman, is because we can purchase the heavy-duty lift by resolution. We have to waive bid for the installation by a group that is captive to the Mohawk Lift Company. So
But if we don't buy the equipment, we wouldn't buy the services.
that is
my
correct.
point.
That is correct.
Whose committee did this come out of?
Well, it was, in fairness to the committee, it was done with 2 items, but
I was surprised to see 2 items on here.
yeah, and the reason is because we had to waive bid with respect to the contractor because we took no bids on it. And nor could we, really, because they were captive to Mohawk.
We could have combined it in one theoretically, but we didn't.
Okay.
We didn't.
Yeah.
We did not.
All right. Are you okay, Alderman Brennan, on this?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, good question. Thank you.
It's not logical, but I'm okay.
All right, so did we read the ordinance yet? No. Clerk Tamer.
An ordinance waiving bid, authorizing the issuance of a notice of award, and authorizing the execution of a contract for the installation of the Mohawk heavy-duty drive-on truck lift and the demolition and removal of the existing lift at the city's equipment maintenance garage. See item 6.14.
All right, a motion to bring this before council. Alderman Brennan, second Alderman Honquist. Alderman Brennan.
Okay, thank you. So this is related to report 6.14. Sourcewell is an alliance purchase cooperative, for local governments like us. We were through the heavy-duty truck lift contract. They awarded that contract to Mohawk. Mohawk requires certified installers, and therefore the local installer for Mohawk is Rack 'em Up proposal for this project. So we sort of sole sourced it based on the guidance from Sourcewell.
Thank you. Questions or discussion? Clerk Tamer.
Toludo.
Aye.
Cahill absent, Nudera.
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Honquist.
Aye.
Bastido.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
Verimus absent, Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Jensen. 12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent. Resolution 9.3, ordinance 9.3 passes. On to resolutions. Clerk Tamer, 10.1.
A resolution ratifying the execution of an amendment to the letter of intent to purchase 108 Haven Road, Elmhurst, Illinois, by and between Ryan Companies, U.S., Inc., and the City of Elmhurst to extend the execution date of the proposed purchase contract. See item 7.3.
Alderman Palumski, second Alderman Mulliner. Alderman Palumski, Alderman Mulliner. Alderman Palumski.
This goes along with item 7.3. We did not indicate in the report to suspend the rules, so I would like to note that we are asking to suspend the rules to approve this on the same night as the report.
Thank you,
Second
Alderman
that
Palumski.
motion.
Thank you, Alderman Mulliner, seconds.
Move to,
Additional discussion? Clerk Tamer.
Toludo.
Aye.
Cahill absent, Nudera.
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Honquist.
Aye.
Bastido.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
Verimus, absent, sorry. Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Jensen. 12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent. Resolution 10.1 passes. Resolution 10.2.
A resolution authorizing the.
Point of order. I think all we did was suspend the rules on the first one. We have to go through the process now.
You
We
take it
suspended
back.
the
Now
rules.
we're on the resolution for 10.1. Thank
It's
you.
getting late.
It is getting late.
Then, and then Mullen, so both of them were on the same
Right.
motion.
Okay, so now we're on the actual resolution. We've suspended the rules. Thank you, Alderman Mulliner. And is any additional discussion on that? No, all right.
Okay,
Clerk
that was
Tamer.
item 10.1 that we're still voting, okay.
Correct.
Sorry, guys. Toledo.
Aye.
Cahill, absent. Nudera.
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Conquest.
Aye.
Bastido.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
Verimus, absent. Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Jensen. 12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent. Now 10.1 passes. 10.2.
A resolution authorizing the purchase of 1 replacement heavy-duty drive-on truck lift for the city's equipment maintenance garage. See item 6.14.
Motion to put this before council. Alderman Brennan, second Alderman Honquist. Alderman Brennan.
Thank you, Mayor. This resolution is related to 6.14 as well. We're asking to suspend the rules this evening to approve the resolution so we can complete this project in 2021.
All right, so we have a motion to suspend the rules. Or is that in the report?
It is in the report.
Oh, then, all right, then it's already been done. All right. Motion is to pass Resolution 10.2. We have a second. Any discussion on it? Clerk Tamer?
Yep, okay, this is on the motion, right?
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
There's no new motion.
There's not like.
Just one
10.1.
motion, yeah.
Okay, all right. Toledo.
Aye.
Cahill, absent. Nudera.
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Conquest.
Aye.
Bastido.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
Verimus, absent. Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Jensen. 12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent. Resolution 10.2 passes. On to other business. I have some other business. I just want to thank all the council, no, really. I just want to thank all the council members for their attention to what has been a very complex, emotional issue. However you voted, I know that you spent a lot of time and talked to a lot of people. It may be the most difficult, contentious one we've had for a very long time, and I appreciate your diligence in that. Anyone else with new business? Other business, rather? All right. Item 12, adjournment. Alderman Toledo, Alderman Jensen, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.
We earned a week off.